You're, it's 6:31, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thank you. I would ask that everybody rise and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Christensen?
Here.
Mr. Pantera?
Here.
Mrs. Greenberg?
Here.
Dr. Lim?
Here.
Ms. Wani?
Here.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of agenda. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Governing Board, Cabinet, and guests. Items approved by consent will not come up for discussion during the meeting, but will be approved when the agenda is adopted. This is possible since members of the Governing Board receive the agenda along with backup materials at least 24 hours prior to the meeting and have time to review and consider all items. Prior to the agenda being adopted, members of the Governing Board may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and brought to the floor for discussion at the appropriate place on the agenda. Any member of the audience who submitted a blue public card prior to the start of the meeting will be recognized to speak on that agenda item under items for approval. I would like to offer the agenda as posted, President Greenberg, with just a few changes. Due to some Governing Board questions received regarding school repurposing, Dr. Davis, our Director of Facilities and Construction, is out of town and unavailable to answer those questions. Therefore, I recommend we remove items F12, F13, and F22 and add them to a future meeting for discussion and/or approval.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Prior to the meeting, we received, we'll say 8 blue public comment cards, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to remark on a specific agenda item, will be recognized to speak under items for approval. And because we received those, these items will also be moved from consent to the approval. So that would be F15, F16, F18, F21, and F24. And that was F15, 16, 18, 21, and 24. Does any member of the Governing Board wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Ms. Christensen?
I want to remove item F8 from the consent agenda.
Okay, so F8 will be moved to the approval agenda. Does any other board member have any other item they wish to move?
For reference, President Greenberg, if something's already been pulled by a comment card, do we need to request that again?
No, it's been moved. Okay. Anybody else? And obviously, members of the public asked for these. So all of those items will be moved after what is already on the approval agenda, and then we'll take them in order of the numbers they were under the consent agenda. Mr. Pantera, may I have motion to approve the meeting agenda and recommended consent agenda items?
President Greenberg, someone out there has their hand up. I don't know if you saw that. I just wanted to point that out, but I do move that we approve the agenda as modified.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is Governing Board statements. Mr. Pantera, do you have anything?
Thank you, President Greenberg. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're all here. I'm going to take a point of personal privilege here and wish my wife, who's watching online, happy birthday tonight, honey. Okay.
Aw.
Yeah. And make sure you save me at least a bite of that birthday cake for when I get home, please. So, speaking of bites, how many people got their Girl Scout cookies bought yet? Right? This is a tough time of year for me. You talk about the holidays. No, this is the time because I have to show much restraint. I do like the sweets, and I have to
pace myself because I don't want to buy all my cookies from one person because I have so many former students who now have students of their own. They remember, oh, Mr. Pantera was a soft touch. We always like to get, a couple boxes from him. So I got to spread the wealth and get them from wherever I can. And speaking of bites, I too many of those things sometimes, and that's why it's good to run. Just last Saturday, we had the fun run, the 5K, the 15th, I believe, annual fun run, which is a lot of exercise and a lot of people showed up. Almost 600 were there this year. It's great to see people. They come out with their, you see your colleagues, but you see your colleagues with their families. And maybe you see your students, but you see your students with their families. Everybody's there together. It's a chance to talk and share with each other. They even had a wellness fair there. So another opportunity for all of us to be more healthy as we are in education. Once again, I came in first of all the board members. So I got my streak going. Yeah, thanks. One guy back there. It's just wonderful. And tomorrow I'm going to be at Eagle Ridge. They have their annual dance that they do this time of year. Their PTSA needed volunteers in my old school. So I'm going there tomorrow. It's what we do here. We have all these ways for us to communicate with each other and to understand each other because it makes that process of education and learning that much easier. When we live in an atmosphere of trust, safety, we know each other. I guess I like our schools like I like my coffee, warm, rich, inviting, and ice-free. So that's what I'm looking forward to very much tomorrow. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Pantera. Dr. Lim?
All right, I'm going to take a little personal privilege too here, and I'm going to take a moment to highlight the teacher, students, and parent engagement around our dual immersion program at Whispering Winds Academy, which is our Mandarin immersion program. Just this past weekend, our 3rd and 4th graders from Miss Van and Go Lausch's classroom performed at the Chinese New Year celebration at Desert Ridge. It was a great opportunity for not only them to celebrate the culture of the language they are learning, but also demonstrating those skills they've been learning speaking Mandarin. While also our parents came not only to bring their students there, but they also spent time engaging the community by hosting a table, spreading the importance of this program and helping the community and potentially future students of Whispering Winds Academy know that this is available right here in PVUSD. I want to send a big shout out and thank you to the students, staff, and parents for taking time out of your weekend to do this. And if you're a little sad that you missed this showcase this past weekend, please join us tomorrow at 6 p.m. at PV High School, where Whispering Winds and myself will be hosting the annual Chinese New Year celebration in collaboration with the amazing staff at Whispering Winds who have been working hard to put this event together. So hopefully we'll see you at 6 p.m. tomorrow at PV High School.
Thank you, Dr. Lim. Mrs. Christensen?
Good evening, everyone. I just want to welcome all the wonderful faculty, staff, parents, and community members that are here today. And I will save my comments for later in the meeting because we have a lot to discuss today. And I just want to welcome you and thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Mrs. Christensen. Ms. Wani?
Good evening, everyone. So you all heard it from Mr. Pantera himself. So if you still have Girl Scouts that need some buyers of cookies, I think we know where to send them. Yeah. So I just want to kind of piggyback a little bit off of Governing Board Member Pantera said and just say what a wonderful opportunity it was to come together as a whole community, the entire district. We don't get a lot of those opportunities. We're a very large district at the Community Fun Run. It's something I have looked forward to just as a parent in this district over and over and over again. And it always kind of makes me pause and reflect and think about how lucky we are that we have such a diverse and wonderful community. I wish we had more opportunities to kind of like all come together as one district. And I just want to kind of take a second and reflect on the importance of community. Community is why I got involved in volunteering and in our schools in the first place. Community, I think, is where we as human beings go in times of uncertainty and times of fear. And we might not all agree on all things all the time, but I think that that's probably something that everyone in this room has in common is that we believe in community. That's why we're all here, whether we're attending, as a community member or a parent or a staff member, a governing board member. And in that vein, When things are uncertain and when there's change, that's a scary time, and we need to be able to lean on community. The thing that we're all also here for are our students. And so I will just hope and kind of put out to this room and hope it ripples sort of out there that, you know, our students need to feel safe in order to learn. Our students need to feel supported. And I know and believe in this community that we will rally around our students and make sure that we are supporting them. We are doing everything that we can to make them feel safe. We're the adults. That's our job. So just a reminder, again, no matter what our differences are, kids deserve to be safe and they need to feel safe to learn. And so let's hold that tight as we sort of like navigate all the things and all the policy, which I'm here for. Don't get me wrong, right? I mean, that's what we're here. That's what we're here to do. But at the end of the day, none of this matters if our kids don't feel safe. So thank you all for being here and for being a part of this community. And I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Wani. I think everybody has said just about everything, but I also want to just give a shout out in regard to the fun run. It was incredible once again. I want to thank everybody on staff who played a role in putting it together. And we had a lot of great volunteers, I think mostly from Horizon, but some other schools as well. And once again, you know, it did bring our community together, and I appreciate that we have continued to do this over 15 years and look forward to the next 15. And thank you all for being here. So next on the agenda is awards and recognitions. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Greenberg. I would like to invite the board to join me in front of the dais.
Good evening, President Greenberg, governing board members, members of cabinet, and attendees both in person and virtual. Tonight we have several recognitions to share with you. This evening we'll be inviting our honorees to the front of the room for their recognition and photo. So when your name is called, please come to the front of the room. Our first honoree tonight is the proud recipient of the Arizona Association of Gifted and Talented Gifted Education Teacher of the Year Award. This honoree demonstrates an exceptional understanding of giftedness and aligns educational experiences with the unique needs and talents of her students. She positively impacts the social, emotional well-being of students and families and goes above and beyond in her commitment to differentiation, enrichment, and equitable practices for gifted students. Please help me welcome from Mountain Trail Middle School and PVHS Uniquely Gifted, Karen Hudson. Our next recognition is the recipient of the Paradise Valley Education Association's Recognition of Professional Standards Award for Teachers. The honoree this evening will be introduced by Ms. Heather Schmidt, PVEA President.
Good evening, President Greenberg, Dr. Reynolds, Governing Board and Cabinet. My name is Heather Schmidt. I'm proud to be the president of the Paradise Valley Education Association. And once a month, I get to do my favorite thing and recognize one of my colleagues and give them their props, as in professionals recognizing other professionals' success. Tonight, I am honored to recognize Elizabeth Warner, the Gifted Program Mentor, as the recipient of the February 2025 PVEA Props. Again, I've started a trend this year. I have 3 nominations for Miss Warner, from Karen Bowden, Amy Bolenbach, and Dr. Karen Hudson. Miss Bowden said Elizabeth is an integral part of the gifted department. She always has time to help with an issue, give advice, or meet with parents, no matter what else is going on. You always feel like you are a priority when reaching out to Elizabeth. Her knowledge of the gifted community is vast, and she knows how to guide teachers, parents, and students whenever an issue arrives or guidance is needed. This is a rare quality and makes our department run more efficiently. From Dr. Hudson, I have had the pleasure and opportunity of working with Mrs. Warner for the past 6 years as she developed a solid base of support at multiple schools for students in our gifted program, including our twice exceptional or 2E students. Under her direction, 2E students, parents, staff members, and I have all greatly benefited from her knowledge and expertise to collaboratively build best practices for our students. What has particularly impressed me over the years is her leadership ability to understand and identify the needs of gifted students and their staff strengths, and collaboratively implement the vision of highly successful programs unique to PV, including Journey and Quest. And from Ms. Bolenbach, Elizabeth is a true gift to the gifted community. Her unwavering dedication to her staff is truly inspiring. She generously shares her time, ideas, and resources, creating a supportive and collaborative environment. She's always accessible, making herself available to her team at all hours. Stop that. Demonstrating a genuine commitment to their growth and success. I have to admit, I've called and texted on weekends, late at night, and early in the morning, and she always happily responds to offer support. Her leadership fosters a culture of excellence and empowers individuals to reach their full potential. Elizabeth encourages us, the gifted teacher team, to reach for more, share our strengths, and to keep learning. I've never felt as supported as I have since joining the gifted team, and that is largely due to Elizabeth. And from PVEA and all of these gifted teachers, we should all be so lucky to have an Elizabeth Warner on our team. Congratulations, Elizabeth.
Thank you for the chance to thank my family, my gifted team, if they all stand. They are amazing people to work with. My mom is here this evening, and my husband Dave, my daughter Shay, who is a PV grad, and my wonderful son-in-law Connor, and my sweet granddaughter Joanna.
Next is the Paradise Valley Education Support Professional of the Month. PV-SEA President Ms. Michelle Courtright is here to make the presentation.
President Greenberg, Governing Board, Dr. Reynolds, and Cabinet. My name is Michelle Courtright, and I have the pleasure of being the president of the Paradise Valley Support Employees Association. And I get to once a month recognize a very, very special person in our district. And this month we are recognizing Becky Carson. She is an administrative assistant for student services. And she is one of a growing trend of administrative assistants who serve not one, but 2 administrators. And I was reminded by every single person that nominated her that the people that she talks to on the phone are not calling to let us know we are doing a wonderful job. They are often heightened in some way. And I am hearing that even though she has not been with us very long, she has a way of managing those challenging, often confrontational phone calls with a calmness and grace. She is positive. She has a professional demeanor that ensures that every parent, staff, and community member that calls feels heard and supported. And almost all of them, either on the phone or that walk through our reception area, are calmer and happier when they leave, which is exactly what we want. Her remarkable work ethic, her patient, her organizational skills consistently impress those around her, making her a model of outstanding customer service in PVUSD. So it is with pleasure that we recognize Becky Carson this month. Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to thank everybody, especially everybody that's here. I see a bunch of familiar faces tonight. I want to thank my husband, who has, been here for everything. My mom, who is the second in our 3 generation of PVUSD employees. My dad, my wonderful bosses, who are both here tonight. My friends, Darlene, Susie, Morgan, and more, everybody. Thank you so much. I've been here for such a short amount of time, and this is unbelievable. Thank you.
Our final recognition this evening will be presented by Principal Shelley Strophus, member of the Paradise Valley Principals Association. Mrs. Strophus will be presenting the Administrators Celebrated for Excellence and Support, or ACES, award. This quarterly recognition highlights administrators and their accomplishments.
I will say, Becky, you are quite friendly because I often call and I'm like, oh, stuff is hitting the fan. And she's like, hi. And then I'm like, okay, it's fine. Like everything's going to be fine. So congrats. Okay. It's so true. Good evening, President Greenberg, governing board members, Dr. Reynolds, cabinet, and guests. I'm Shelley Strophus, filling in for our sick president, Alyssa, tonight. But it's my great honor to stand before you tonight representing an incredible group of leaders, the principals and vice principals of PV schools. We would like to recognize one of our leaders for the ACES Award, Administrators Celebrated for Excellence and Support. While many principals and assistant principals were nominated, we would like to celebrate Michelle Fowler. Her colleague Tammy D'Elia shared, "It is with the utmost admiration that I nominate Michelle for the prestigious ACES Award. Mrs. Fowler is not only an exceptional leader, but also an inspiring colleague who makes the challenges of this role feel more manageable through her unwavering dedication and support. Her creativity and commitment to her staff are evident in the countless ways she uplifts and appreciates them. Through innovative initiatives and heartfelt gestures of gratitude, Mrs. Fowler fosters a positive, collaborative environment where her team feels valued, motivated, and empowered to succeed. Mrs. Fowler's deep care for her students shines through in everything she does. She exemplifies what it means to put students first, ensuring they receive the academic, social, and emotional support they need to thrive. Even in the face of challenges, she remains approachable, listening with empathy and addressing difficult situations with wisdom and grace. Her staff deeply respects and admires her, consistently expressing how supported they feel under her leadership. Mrs. Fowler's ability to cultivate a culture of trust, positivity, and excellence enables her team to focus on what matters most, helping students reach their fullest potential. Michelle is an extraordinary principal whose passion, kindness, and leadership leave a lasting impact on her students, staff, and colleagues. She approaches her work with a smile and an infectious energy that inspires everyone around her, making her truly deserving of this honor. On behalf of the Paradise Valley principals, we honor Michelle Fowler as a true leader. Congrats.
All right, change this up, falling down.
All right, my husband is at home cheering me on today, but I would like to thank my PVP family in the back. I appreciate that, and especially Tammy. Said very lovely things, so thank you, Tammy. All right, thank you. That's it.
And that, President Greenberg, concludes this evening's awards and recognitions.
Thank you all. Next on the agenda is superintendent's comments. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Or should I say newly Grandma Greenberg? Very exciting. There are lots of pictures up here if you'd like to stay after. She's absolutely willing to show them. I also want to give a shout out to the entire district for just an amazing 5K that we held over the weekend. Our benefits team just did an extraordinary job, and it's such a wonderful event and an opportunity for us to come together and celebrate as a community. In PV schools, we engage, inspire, and nurture students through high-quality instruction, meaningful educational opportunities, and dynamic learning experiences. One of those opportunities is our district's partnership with WestMech and Paradise Valley Community College. PV Schools has partnered with PVCC and WestMech to offer students in grades 9 through 12 access to tuition-free college programs where they can earn high school credits that count towards graduation and college credits. These programs are offered during the school day and include clinical data, esports, EMT, and paralegal. PV Schools wants to help prepare your child for the future career. To learn more or how to apply, please contact your school's counselor. Graduation, this is hard to say, but graduation is quickly approaching, and the College and Career Department is here to help you and your family navigate the next steps. Explore post-secondary pathways options with your senior by attending our comprehensive College and Career 101 night. This event is specifically designed for students with IEPs or a 504 plan and will explore all the unique opportunities that will support your child's future. This is a virtual event that will be held on Thursday, February 20th from 6 to 7 p.m. and will be hosted through Google Meet. Graduation will be here before you know it, and PV Schools wants to encourage you to take advantage of this important night that will positively impact your child's future. For more information, please contact our College and Career Department. On Monday, February 24th, the College and Career Department is also offering an in-person district-wide senior FAFSA night to support senior students and families seeking guidance on completing their 2025 FAFSA forms. The event will occur at North Canaan High School from 5:30 to 7:30, and registration is required. As a reminder, all contributors must create their FAFSA IDs prior to the event. And parents, please bring your 2023 tax documents and a laptop. For more information, please contact the College and Career Department. And Grandma Greenberg, that concludes my comments.
I'm going to have to get used to that. Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Next on the agenda are items for approval. The first is consideration of, of the new MOU to the ESP bargaining agreement, and I will turn it over to Dr. Holmes to give us some more
Thank you.
info.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As you are aware, the Transportation Department is stretched very thin with respect to staffing. As such, daily attendance in the department is incredibly important. And with that in mind, we're asking your approval of an attendance incentive. That's hard to say those two words together. An attendance incentive for those in the department critical to the transportation of students. We've outlined the details in the MOU attached to this agenda item, and I will share that I did work with Michelle Courtright, PVSEA president, to develop this. I'm happy to answer, oh, and she supports, that's important, she supports, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. May I please have a motion to approve the new MOU to the Education Support Professional ESP bargaining agreement with PVSEA for 2024 as presented? Mr. Pantera?
So moved.
Does any board member have any comments? Mrs. Christensen?
Thank you, President Greenberg. I do have a question.
Answer to both.
Okay. So I thank you for this. I really appreciate that. I do have a question regarding CDLs because it's my understanding that when somebody applies to be a bus driver, then we help them with their CDL. Does the district pay for that, or does the individual applying for the job pay for that? Is that?
So other companies may charge for a CDL, but we have an in-house trainer. So it's not like there's a charge or a billing that would happen for it, but we do maintain an in-house trainer to be able to do that. Usually takes somewhere from 4 to 6 weeks.
Thank you. The reason I'm asking that question is because I was just trying to think of other ways for it to incentivize people to stay longer, because it's my understanding that I'm not sure if it's happening in our district, but in other districts, they will get a CDL and then they will
Happen here.
they will drive for Waste Management or somebody else, and then they make a lot more money. And so I was thinking, is there a way to have, in business, what we generally do is have something where you have to be here at least 6 months or a year, otherwise that gets revoked. I don't know if that's even legal. So I'm just asking the question, is that another way that we can incentivize our wonderful bus drivers to stay longer?
Yes, thank you. It is legal. It's something Dr. Holmes and I have briefly discussed and will probably be discussing further. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments, questions?
Just
Ms.
one,
Wani?
really. So thank you for this, program. And thank you to Michelle Courtright for, coming to the table and working with everyone on this. I just have one question, which is, was there like conversations with the drivers or a way of kind of gathering ideas about what might speak to them? And did this kind of come from that? I'm just sort of curious.
Sure. Primarily the conversations were between Brandon George, the director of the department, myself, Michelle Courtright, Jill Berrigan. And of course, that's with a lot of knowledge that, we understand that pay is incredibly important, as expressed by members of the department on a regular basis. So this is an effort to meet that interest in the department.
Does anybody else? Dr. Lim?
So piggybacking off of that question, are we then going to be tracking if this incentive actually is increasing the absentee rate of our drivers, or if this actually does have a positive impact to keep our drivers coming to work on a regular? Are we
Yes.
going to keep track of that? Okay.
Does anybody else have any thoughts, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is acceptance of gifts and donations. We are incredibly grateful. I signed lots of letters today. Would like to highlight some of the donations we received. Suntech Concrete gave Campobello Elementary nearly $2,000 for classroom supplies and furniture for second grade. Dorito Partners gave $1,000 to Echo Mountain Intermediate for prizes for their Caught Being Kind store. Angel and Jeff Carudis, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing, gave $15,000 to Echo Mountain Primary for various classrooms and staff. Abrazo Central Campus gave $5,000 each to Greenway Middle School and Paradise Valley High School as well. So thank you to all of the donors and your incredible generosity to our students, staff, and schools. And Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to accept gifts and donations, please?
So moved.
Does any board member have any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda are the items that were previously on the consent agenda. So the first is what was F8. So I'm sorry, I'm working off of two different agendas here to make sure I grab everything. So this is consideration approval of resolution number 571, an agreement with Arizona Board of Regents for and on behalf of NAU and PVUSD. And I will turn it over to Ms. Copen to give us some
Thank you,
information.
President Greenberg, governing board members. Our district has partnered with the Educational Technology Consortium for over 10 years. This is a 5-year renewal agreement that allows our district to participate in a consortium that's led by the NAU, Northern Arizona University. It provides us access to high quality, customized data integrity tools and auditing report services for state ADM funding. By joining this consortium, our district benefits from exclusive tools that are not commercially available. We access tools to ensure accurate reconciliation of reported data to the ADE. And through our membership into the consortium, these tools become available to us at a modest cost and greatly improve funding accuracy and compliance. We recommend approval of this agreement, and I am happy to answer any questions. And Mr. Billings is also here tonight to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Copen. Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to approve, sorry, getting back to it, resolution number 571, an agreement with the Arizona Board of Regents for and on behalf of Northern Arizona University and Paradise Valley Unified School District.
So moved.
Does any member have any comments or questions? Mrs. Christensen.
Thank you for that update. You answered a little bit of my first question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. My first question was, what's the purpose of this agreement and what are the benefits to Paradise Valley Unified? So you did mention we will be utilizing them and we will have access to tools that would be unavailable to us.
President Greenberg, Mrs. Christensen, yes, that is correct.
Okay. What other benefits to Paradise Valley would be included?
Ms. Christensen, the consortium offers a variety of services. We really use one service, which is what I mentioned about the tool that helps us reconcile our data to create greater accuracy around our funding and what we're reporting to ADE.
Okay. Is this solely a personnel resource concern or is it an economic as well, in addition to the tool that you mentioned? So is it both that we're doing this?
I might just turn that to Mr. Billings. That was a question I wasn't sure what was being asked there, but I think he might help us.
Good evening and congratulations on the grandma. I'm a new grandpa and it's phenomenal. Yes, ma'am. The question specifically, what happens in Arizona is that every year there's changes to funding. Like there's been some big changes, for instance, for CTED, JTED, CTE type funding, right? these are very rapid and have to be integrated. In fact, funding has gotten transactional almost on a daily basis, right? Um, all of that's good, but the changes in the law need to be rapidly implemented. Because Ms. Berrigan holds me accountable for making sure the data has integrity, is accurate, and we're getting all the funding we should get. So it's kind of a combination of speed, skill set. For the price, I can't beat it, you know, and they're the only ones in Arizona that do it.
So do we have somebody in-house that does that? Because it was my understanding, I looked at the list, there's a large list of other districts that are gonna come on to this consortium, but I didn't see our largest district, which is Mesa. And it's my understanding that they have somebody that writes grants and they do these types of things in-house, so they have a full-time person, that's all they do. Is that one of the considerations? Why we're not doing that in-house?
Yeah, organization, Mesa, as you know, is much larger in enrollment. The Mesa also has, they've got quite a culture of having quite a bit more, a much larger, even on a per student basis, ratio than our IT department has, right? We're lean and mean and agile, and I don't have an issue with that. But not the mean part, I'm trying to improve, but they've consistently over the last couple of decades have had a very heavy software development cycle. They're fun. They used to develop their own student information system, though, and they no longer do that. They couldn't keep up with the changes. And they use a different student information system than we do.
My final question, well, just a comment. I wish I could be more lean and less mean as well. So thank you for that. Will NAU be doing the RFPs for all of those individuals districts? Because it just seems like a big burden on NAU, or is this not new? Is that what I'm understanding? They're already doing this? Because
Sorry.
and as required by procurement law for all these districts listed on page 7.
You could put an RFP, but nobody does it until a business steps up and develops it so that we can procure it through an RFP process. That's where we're at. And believe me, I've thought about it, but I just don't have the desire. I like public education right now. So rather than being an entrepreneur, which I used to be.
Thank you for answering all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member of the board have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda was former F-15. So that is consideration to approve purchase from current district contract 2202 PV for interactive display flat panels. Ms. Copen?
President Greenberg, governing board members, the purchase of new line boards is afforded to our district through bond funding, and we are grateful that these funds allow us to invest in things that align with voter-approved bonds, specified expenditures, and supports the district committed to modernizing classroom technology and enhancing learning experiences for our students. The boards were selected through the collaborative work of our Information Technology Committee. This purchase also includes support for teachers through training. We are requesting approval for the new line boards purchase. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Billings is available also.
Thank you, Ms. Copen. We have one public comment card on this. Wendy Mahler. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, President Greenberg, school board members, and blanking on your positions, cabinet. I'm a former parent with a child in the district and a current community member and taxpayer. If you could please help me understand why the district wants to spend $3 million on 496 flat panel displays with bond dollars. And also how it came to be that this is a new classroom standard. So that means each one of these roughly costs $6,048 per panel. The bond was sold to the public to maintain the schools, such as the AC units, and not create new classroom standard of flat screens so 4 students can project their screens at this cost. The district has just closed schools and went to the voters to pass a bond measure due to declining enrollment, also while facing a $14 million budget deficit, and are expecting the taxpayers to pay back this $3 million spend through our property taxes. Moreover, tonight, later on, you'll be proposing to rebuild Indian Bend and spending $1 million on bathrooms to move a preschool to one of the closed schools. May I please ask why these flat panels are necessary, why now, and why is this a new classroom standard? Personally, I'd also like to know, is this going to raise proficiency levels that our students are currently at? Will this get them to at grade level? How are you planning on distributing these 496 panels? Are you planning on dividing up equally between all of our schools in the district? Is it possible, since these are they will be on mobile carts, that if you do plan on voting on this, maybe you could amend it to have only 1 or 2 per school? These are 7-foot panels. And will these all need to be replaced within 7 years? So this will be an ongoing spend every 7 years because that's when the warranty will expire, and we know how technology is, it changes all the time. In conclusion, I would please ask that you vote no or amend on these $3 million spend and be fiscally responsible to your property owners and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to approve purchase from current district contract 2202 PV for interactive display flat panels?
So moved.
Does any member of the board have any comments or questions? Ms. Wani?
I have a question. So this is 496, I think. Is this for the purchase of 496 of them? Is that correct? So do we have classrooms right now that have these boards in our district? Mrs. Swanee, yes. Okay. And so was this sort of like a plan then to phase in so that we can ensure that all classrooms are sort of operating in the same standard and have the same resources?
Mrs. White, that is correct. This is going to be replacing like the LCD projector and screens that have become very expensive to maintain and outdated.
Okay. And do we have a sense of the lifespan on these?
Look at.
He might need a seat here from now on. I don't know.
He might just need to stay up there. Yes.
Sorry. Yes, ma'am. Every technology, and not just digital technology, has a lifespan. Cars, air conditioners, computers. The object is to get where we're moving into now, and this also, I'll try to be quick. The object is to maintain it as long as we can to get maximum value out of it. We push the limit in PV. It's now becoming a little more dynamical with cybersecurity. And, we have to keep things updated, These are computers with a very large display and audio speakers, right? So we have to manage it, we have to secure it, and we run it as long as the operating system can stay with us. These are based on Android 14 currently. And so to answer the immediate question, I think was lifespan?
Yeah, like I know it's hard to, I don't expect you to say, 5 years and then but just to
we've been using them. I assume other districts use them. Do we have just a sense of like how long we've been able to keep them, in use?
I would say any computational device today, 7 to 10 years is probably maxed out, and that's primarily because of cybersecurity anymore. It can't keep up with the security updates and the operating system and the vendors. I'm sorry, but I came from a corporate world, but it's planned obsolescence. They're going to move you forward, right? One way or another. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then I think my next question, I just have one more for Mrs. Berrigan. I think and thank you because you did sort of talk about how this is in line with the voter approved uses. And so to sort of expand on that, Mrs. Berrigan, I know that when there's when the district is sort of trying to decide and do their homework around, do we need to go out? Do we want to go out for a bond? I know you all do your homework and there's, committee with stakeholders, correct? And as part of that committee, do you discuss things like, what's on the list? What are, what are we looking to sort of accomplish and what would be the estimated budget for those kinds of items?
Mrs. Wani, yes, we do that,
And-
and
okay.
technology was included in that.
Okay, and then this specifically did this come up in conversation with like at that time as a
2
possibility?
years ago.
Yeah.
I presume so.
Yeah,
I know that he's had this in his plan, that all of these pieces, when he provided his estimate for the bond, were part of his plan and what he was intending for the use of the proceeds of bond sales. And then specifically in the voter pamphlet that was shared with or mailed to every member who lives in this community, there was a line for furniture, fixture, technology, and equipment. So that was advertised to voters
And
appropriately.
so you've been waiting for this item for a little while, planning for it and considering the cost of it and incorporating that into the ask that ultimately went to voters and voters approved, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And I can add, Ms. Berrigan headed up the bond committee, which has community members as well as parents, as well as teachers and directors and principals and, am I forgetting?
About it.
Okay. The one, Ms. Berrigan, which I've served on 3 bond committees in my tenure here, she did something that I thought was really interesting. She went out to a focus group, surveyed focus groups outside of the committee that was community members. And what was interesting but consistent was, and Ms. Bergen drove that into all the committee's heads, this is the community speaking, right? If we were to go for this, how would you like to see this money invested? Notice I say invested, right? To me, that's what education is. It's an investment, not a cost. Sorry, but that's just my personal. The top 3 consistently were number 1, school safety, number 2, technology, and number 3, modernize. Every buy I'm doing or asking you to do has to have at least 2 and preferably 3 of those components. Or why are we doing it? We're not listening to the community if we're not doing that. So that's not good in business when you don't listen to your customers, right? So these boards meet all 3 of those criteria. And I can go into that a little bit deeper if you want.
I mean, I could do this all day, but I'll give my colleagues an opportunity.
Sorry.
Does any other member of the board? Dr. Lim?
So I'm going to take it away from you. We're going to head back over here to Jean Copen. So my question is actually around, it sounds like we do have smart boards in place. These smart devices are already in place in some of our schools. So my biggest concern with us rolling out something like this is, one, how has the staff reception been to these devices in those classrooms? And is that training sufficient? We know devices like this are not any use to us in the classroom if staff and those who are utilizing them aren't trained appropriately, including our students. So how is the rollout going with that? How is the reception? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, Dr. Lim, thank you for asking that question. Yes, training is a critical part of this rollout, and we have included that in the purchasing agreement so that we will be including that. We did pilot these. Actually, the schools showed great interest in them initially and used some of their dual enrollment funding to put these in teachers' classrooms before we were considering them. They incorporated the training. We did study that a little when teachers had adequate training. We saw about a 80% usage compared to those who did not. So it is critical that they get the training, and that is part of the rollout plan.
Great. And extending on that, what was the age group that we piloted? What grades were we piloting these in? Have we gone all the way down, or what's the goal for these smart boards and what space?
Dr. Lim, I might rely on Mr. Billings for this. I know high school put them in initially with dual enrollment funding, so we definitely had them in.
Yeah, I want to add to and clarify something. Smart Boards is a brand name, okay, for interactive large screen devices. So we've had smart boards in this district. We tried it pilot at a school a number of years back. We've had some Panasonic, and we've tried to pilot Dell Intel as a kind of an interesting, the uptick wasn't they didn't take, right? And what we found is that if you professionally develop, you get about an 85% uptick. If you don't, it's about 15%. If you say, here's a board, please use, it doesn't work, right? So these are things we've learned over the years, which sometimes is decades, but that's another subject. But the schools, Ms. Copeland is absolutely correct. The schools drove the initial of this is the board, right? This is the tool we want. And I have to thank Ms. Shelley in the background back there, a principal at Horizon, was very instrumental in doing this. So they kind of drove this, and then it got into what's called the Information Technology Committee, which is a big committee of all stakeholders. Do we want to do this? Do we not want to do this? Is the right board? How are we going to integrate it? What kind of professional development? How do we secure it out? You know, all of this kind of thing. And they also set the deployment plan, which goes specifically to your question. It was, we're not going to force anything down a teacher's throat. Doesn't work, right? So there's an actual 4-year plan. They've got 4 years to get used to what the community is telling us: modernize, use technology, right? And school safety on top of that. So the initial deployment plan was teacher choice, first come, first serve. It was spread across the spectrum. Okay, gifted, special ed, K-12, you name it. So does that answer the question? Sorry. I had a challenge.
That's the upcoming plan of how the deployment.
We're going to follow that same model because that was the model, the ITC, that's what they reached consensus on. That's their model, which is that community stakeholder committee.
I do have other questions, but I can defer to any other. Okay. So, so talking on that, you did mention special ed classrooms. So the other concern I had thinking about these boards is, as a district, have we began to think about that interactive boards aren't always best for all of our learners. Sometimes they actually can marginalize some of our learners who may not do well with technology in the classroom. So are we putting measures in place and making sure there are going to be protections so that learners who are negatively impacted by this being in that space, we're accounting for that and we're supporting these students appropriately so we don't marginalize kids in the classroom because they don't benefit from having this in the room. It's actually a detriment to their learning.
Yes, ma'am. We listen to the teachers. We listen to the programs. We adjust. We adapt. We're lean, mean, and we adapt. Not so mean, but so we have to listen to those experts. What's happening in the classroom? it's a continuous loop, right? So that's why it's a 4-year plan. We keep learning and learning and learning each year and adjusting. It's a multimodal sensorial. It's, those who can hear better than see, those who can see better than hear, those who want interactive touch. And then there are some, if this is a distraction, absolutely. You don't want to impact learning. Like, I'm not a good reader. I have to have, that's just me. That's the way I learn. I'm visual.
I think the answer to your question was yes.
Okay. Yes, but I just want to take that a little bit further and ask, so what are we going to do in our schools that have, say, low numbers? So we know some of our schools are down to, only one or they're down to 2 classrooms. And for example, at Whispering Winds Academy, we have the dual immersion, then we have the full English learners who are doing everything in English. So what happens when we have learners that are in specialized programs that are not benefiting from these in the classroom? So what are we going to do in those schools where we don't really have a place to say move a student out of a space where that device is? We don't want to force students into a special ed classroom that may not benefit to be in a special ed classroom if it's not there. Like, what plans do we have in place that are not just pushing the student out of the space that they're comfortable in, say the classroom that they're in or a program they're in, because this device is present in their room?
That question is better answered by somebody other than me. I will do what my boss and bosses tell me. So, I'll implement from there.
Dr. Lim, I'll try to answer your question. We don't anticipate that will be a large amount of students. And of course, for those kids, we'll make those adjustments. These boards have a very high sensory piece to them. The visuals are way beyond what we can do with LCD projectors and what we currently have. So we anticipate that all students will be able to see curriculum better from every seat in the classroom. They have great auditory features to help kids hear, like our videos that are embedded in our curriculum. Their touch screens so they can actually do activities. So they're interactive. So we anticipate specifically with students that might have some challenges that this might even benefit them and give them more than what we're currently giving them with our technology that's providing this in their classroom.
And do we have data to actually back that up, or is that just a gut feeling that we're hoping it's going to help these learners? Like, do we have actual academic data showing, because these interactive boards are not new, they are present. Do we have data showing that these are benefiting those learners, not harming those learners?
So Dr. Lim, I'll answer that. I don't have like an official study in front of me, but some of our characteristics that we're aspiring for Portrait of a Graduate do include a lot of college and career ready skills. And we know that our kids are bound for technology. So the more we incorporate this in their learning experiences throughout their schooling with us, we feel the better we are preparing them for what they're going to encounter in either post-secondary or the workforce. So I think they have those benefits, especially to cite specific academic achievement. I don't have that right in front of me.
Yeah, I think I'm less concerned about them learning to use the technology. I think our kids learn just fine how to use the technology. It's more of, this is now another bright, shiny thing in the classroom that feels like it might take away from the learning process, especially for students that might be neurodiverse or have high sensory issues. These are high sensory devices that feels like may marginalize these students who have sensory issues. And now there's a huge, bright, shiny object in their room that may be actually impacting their sensory issues in a negative way instead of a positive way. Less about them learning to use the technology and more about that small population of students not getting marginalized, because this is something we've rolled out in every space in our schools.
Dr. Lim, do you have any other questions, comments?
I think that was all of my questions.
Okay. And Mrs. Christensen, did you? Okay.
Yeah, I would like to thank the board members, Wani and Dr. Lim, for their thoughtful questions and making my job a little easier, because you asked a lot of my questions, but I still have lots more. So 496 screens, that's a little over 10 per school. What schools specifically? Are they going in all the schools, is my understanding, or have we targeted certain schools?
It's still using the ITC's recommendation. It's a first come, first serve kind of a rollout. Who's most adoption is, you have to have the end user, you know, so when they're ready, if they're not ready yet, if we have a teacher who's not ready or a classroom of students who are not ready or whatever, it's a 4-year plan. We're trying to, in order to serve the community who, you know, school safety, technology, and modernize, right? So it's a 4-year implementation plan. We're not going to force any teacher on it. Or they, you know, they got 4 years to see their colleagues use it. Are they getting more comfortable? This kind of adoption type thinking.
With the answer to that question, I'm a little bit concerned about some of our title schools. And so Palomino, for instance, I know that there's a lot of Latinos in Palomino that are struggling with language itself. And if our educators who are amazing at helping them bridge the language gap and also learn, how are they going to manage this new technology? So I fear that these technologies are all going to go to our schools like Greyhawk and Pinnacle Peak and the high schools, and then the title schools may be left out because it doesn't sound like you have a solid rollout plan yet. It's first come, first serve. So
4-year plan. And I haven't found that with Palominos in particular. They're very embracing of technology, very much so. So I don't know. I don't have the numbers in the back of my head, what schools took, you know, got in first and what schools are in second. Principals would know that better than I.
Ms. Christensen, from what I'm seeing, I think there's enthusiasm throughout the district. We have several teachers kind of chomping at the bit to get these tools in their classroom. And I do want to say that it is a tool. It does not replace any of our valuable teaching. It is a tool that enhances our curriculum, enhances what the teachers are doing in the classroom. But we have several teachers from all schools that are very interested. One of the pieces is they will have to receive training before they get their board. That's kind of the deal, is that they have to be trained on the board before we install it or roll it into their classroom. So we have a lot of teachers that are willing to take that on. They value this tool for their students. They are embracing technology, and they know what it can do and how it can enhance their instruction. So I'd say there's enthusiasm throughout the district, not in specific places.
So having heard that response, I'm a little bit worried about burdening our educators because it seems like we get new curriculum pretty much every other year. And I know there's a lot on their plates, and we really ask our educators to do a lot. And it seems like if it's on a volunteer basis, that the rollout may not be very smooth if we're just, you know, asking for volunteers. But I'm concerned about burdening our educators. Has not come up in any of the conversations.
Ms. Christian, we're always concerned about that balance. From the observations I've done in classrooms, our LCD projectors and screens are not adequate for what they want to do. A lot of people want to do. They're becoming very outdated. If you have 30 students in a classroom, sometimes it's difficult to see. I think teachers are excited about what this is going to bring to the classroom. As far as the burden, I think that the training is it's integrated into, it's not like you sit in a classroom and you know, it's going to be integrated into them using it every day. The more they use it, the more they'll learn about it. I think that there are teachers that this is second nature to them. They're looking for these tools. A lot of our teachers that are coming out of college are looking for these type of tools in our classrooms because this is how they learned. I realized the other day that some of our teachers were born in 2000, 2001. So even our teachers are pushing us with technology and striving to keep up with what is going to be required of our students outside of when they leave us in the 12th grade.
I know our district talks a lot about equitable practices. I prefer to talk about fairness, and it doesn't seem fair that because it doesn't sound like that's enough for everybody to go around, and every teacher that may want one not on And so how are we addressing if we have so many teachers that want this, but are they sharing these? Or are they staying in one? I was reading in the details that we may put some in hallways. That gives me pause. I don't know if that was just a random thing, but why would we put them in hallways?
There's two reasons. At some of our high schools, it's digital signage. It's to make sure they remember to get some sleep tonight because you got tests tomorrow. We got a football, it's that kind of thing. Now, that is not that's school decided, okay? What we're trying to get to is a standard. So we don't have this for this and this for that, and then come to the IT department and say, manage this and secure it for us, right? You have to get to a standard to be able to measure improvement. If you got it all over the place, it's hard to measure improvement. So for instance, that can be sent with morning announcements, messaging, if a school wants it. The other thing, once we go to the standard, and I want to make sure you understand this, is there's this thing called school safety. Okay, so this is where these boards really shine. Okay, I know instructional is where everybody's at, the focus. I work for the instructional person there. But there is school safety is another thing. Okay, how do we get messages quickly, fast, clear, emergency alerts? The old days of the intercom it has to be faster and it has to be consistent and clear, and it has to recognize that some kids don't like loud noises, right? Or they have issues with that. So you have to do it multisensorial, being sensitive to who are I'm sorry if I'm not using the correct terminology, but does that make sense, kind of what I'm saying?
So that was a lot to digest. With with all due respect, a $6,000 price tag per device for a signage seems very excessive to me. And also, the speed of sound is faster than a visual display. If there's an emergency, we have alarm systems in place for school safety in order to sound the alarm for everybody.
I understand that's fireworks. The boards have, there's a thing called CAP, Community Action Protocol. And a message can be triggered, including the principal can trigger it on their phone, and we can go to lockdown, we can go to evacuation. Yes, fire drill is separate. It's a separate kind of thing. It's managed and we have different compliance rules, okay? A community action protocol is now a standard. These boards now integrate community action protocol natively. And I want to point out that the digital signage, they're about a third the cost of an interactive board.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes,
Okay.
you indicated that we're using this to replace the LCD displays with the 7 to 10 year lifespan. To me, again, that's not an enormous lifespan for such a large investment in almost $3 million. And Dr. Lim brought up a really good question that was on my list as well. Where are the studies or metrics done that says this is going to raise our proficiency levels, or is it just a new shiny object? So I did have that concern as well. So thank you for asking that question.
I go back to what the focus groups of the bond committee of the community said. School safety, technology, modernize. That's what they wanted the money invested in. I will try to do that as delicately as I can in incorporating all three of those. But the ballgame's changed in school safety, as you well know, I'm sure. And it has to be consistent, reliable, multimodal, fast, and clear. The object is to reach every, I don't want to get into the details.
Okay, so I do like that. I do like your top 3: safety and modernization, and I can't.
not
Safety
mine.
tech
School
and, well,
safety, technology, modernization.
technology and modernization. I do like that. However, we have to balance that with fiscal responsibility. And I do appreciate that this is bond money and that the voters approved this, but we still have to look at expenditures, even when it's bond money. This is taxpayer dollars. And would the taxpayers be happy about a $6,000 price tag for one device? I don't know. So this is the question. Dell, you mentioned Dell and other vendors. Did you consider price when you were looking at other vendors, and how did that process take place? What was the process to determine?
Once,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Once the specifications are defined, what is it you're looking for? What products out there have this capability? When the community sent a very clear message on school safety, the object, every device we buy, we want to get more value out of it. It's not just about price, it's value. When I can start tapping not only the instructional practices that I'm told we need to tap, multimodal, interactive, higher resolution, this kind of thing. And by the way, students' computers can be shared on the screen instantly too. So you can have up, like, hey, Johnny, show what you're doing to the other students, right? But, so the object becomes, how do you integrate systems? That's where we're in. This is no different than about 20 years ago, when we had to move from analog phones to VoIP. We could not maintain analog systems. You're getting very quickly to that point with our current analog speakers. They have to go through IP to get the message out, and that creates challenges with older technology. It's technology. I didn't create it. I'm just trying to survive in this business like everybody else is.
Thank you. I do really appreciate
No, it's
answering
good.
all our questions. Having heard the discussion and some of the concerns, I move to table this matter until our next study session so that we can have time to digest all that. That was a lot of information. And having it in consent agenda means that I don't think the taxpayers and community members had a chance to really dive into this. So perhaps, I move to table this item until the next.
I was trying to get a comment in
Apologies.
much earlier, but someone seems to be dominating all the questions here. My hand's been up for a while.
There were three of us, and okay, go ahead.
I've been through many of these rollouts with technology before. Okay, here's some of the questions, and we've had these questions before. These things have come up before. It is just a tool. It's not the program. It's to help us do the program. We do what we always do here. We use it and adjust it individually for each need as it occurs. These kind of tools give us more technology to help us in ways we couldn't before with kids with special needs, to do things more for them than we could ever in the past. And that's true when we had our computers coming out, when we first got computers for all the students. It's a dynamic, interactive process. So if you ask for a specific plan, well, the plan is interactive. Who wants them? How are you going to use them? And then, okay, show us how you use them. You ask about student achievement. It's like asking about what kind of student achievement data for having a kid have a chair in the classroom. It's a tool. We use it. It's vital to what we need right now. That is my experience. It's been working for our district as far as how we get our students into technology, things that they need, especially when things are wearing out and becoming obsolete. They need not the same thing, but the thing that's the next stage forward.
Thank you. There is a motion on the floor to table this item. Is there a second? This is a secondary motion, so it would require a second. Does anybody second the motion? Seeing none, we're back to the motion on the floor. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Dr. Lim?
So I think this one goes to Jill. So clarification for the approval, it may actually go to you as well, President Greenberg. So if these dollars have to be spent in a certain amount of time, if I understand correctly, for the bond dollars. So asking for a partial amount for something is not an option based on the limit of the bonds, or just for clarity to understand, like, this rollout requires us to approve the entire amount for the number of boards to do the rollout? Or if this is a 4-year plan, is there any possibility to approve half of the amount with the plan to approve the other half in 2 years? And splitting up this 3 million into a 1.5 and a 1.5?
I'll let Mrs. Bergen address that, but to change the motion would require another motion, would require separate motion.
Yeah, thank you, President Greenberg. Dr. Lim, I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you wanting, and I think I actually need Jeff's help in understanding this. Is this set 1 year of 4 years, or is this set to be rolled out over 4 years?
Excuse me, if the board approves this, will be about 40% deployment at that point in time. So there's 60% more. Now, did that answer your question?
No. 40% of your total deployment or 40% of this bond's 4-year rollout?
40% of the total deployment.
Okay, so this 3 million is already only a portion of that.
Okay. So if there were any changes to the amount, it would reduce the number of schools that we can deploy out to, because we're already only able to deploy to 40%.
That is correct.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Mrs. Christensen?
Yes. And I do appreciate, as I mentioned before, I do appreciate every board member's comments on here, and I am not monopolizing this conversation. We had healthy discussion, Ms. Lim and Dr. Lim and Ms. Wani, and I have an IT background, but that was my degree, and I do understand the importance. I do understand the importance of technology. We have to balance that with a lot of the concerns that Dr. Lim mentioned with our most vulnerable children, sensory issues, things of that nature, and fiscal responsibility. So I'm not saying I'm against technology. I think this is wonderful, just my opinion, but I just want to ensure that we are using our bond dollars in a way that is going to benefit our students. And that's why I asked for metrics. That's why I asked for studies on how it's going to increase academic achievement, because if it's not, if it's just a fun new toy and we're spending $3 million, then we've wasted $3 million of taxpayer money.
And I'd just like to jump in and first of all, thank Mr. Billings for being here this evening and answering these questions. Mr. Billings is, if not the foremost leader in K-12 technology leadership. He certainly is one of them. I have every confidence that he and the team that he works with, the committee that has worked hard, both a bond committee and a technology committee, have worked hard to work through many of these issues and questions. And I want to thank you for that work.
I'd also just like to make a comment. Thank you, Professor Billings. You and I have, been at this a while, and I agree with everything Dr. Reynolds said. You are, I'm going to say you are the guru. I also want to say, as a parent of a student who, went through school with an IEP and certainly had sensory concerns most of the time, I just want to give a shout out to our educators who, no matter whether something was in his IEP, or I know parents who have students with 504s, our educators are very sensitive to the needs of our students. And I know that if, they're in a classroom and, realistically, they're in a classroom with a smart board now, so maybe the graphics aren't as good or whatever. If they're having a sensory issue, they're having an issue, it will be addressed. I have every confidence that these will be used again as the tools that they are meant to be. They will provide greater support. I'm excited. I mean, we keep talking about wanting our students to be college and career ready. And this is exactly one of those ways we help reach that goal. Yeah, I find it interesting. Many of our educators are expecting this because it's how they learned, and they want to be able to reach our students in even greater ways by using this technology. So I do, and I appreciate that you've also referred back to the committee and the community so often in terms of ensuring that we're reaching the goals and the information that our community and the desires that our community have in terms of how we're using these bound dollars and what we're using them for in terms of technology. So I very much appreciate everybody's discussions and contributions. Mrs. Christensen?
President Greenberg, I don't think we addressed Dr. Lim's question about perhaps making up for her making a motion if she wished for a lower amount. I don't know. I just want to ensure that every voice is heard on this board, and I'm not sure if her question was addressed properly.
I think your question was addressed. Do you want to make a motion?
And I don't want to make a motion. Thank you for clarifying that this is going to hit 40% of our population. And frankly, I think trying to hit only 20% is actually doing a disservice to the district. So the fact that we're only going to hit 40% with this rollout means that there is still work to be done. And I appreciate the insight that this is going to modernize our classrooms and that we have a choice of stick with the old technology and start to replace it or replace it with this new technology. So while I still have some reservations and some concerns to make sure that if students need accommodations or updates to IEP or 504 as these roll out, that we continue to do that among our special educations, that would be my only thing, would be that we still consider and make sure that we have appropriate measures in place to make sure that our students that don't benefit from being in these spaces have those accommodations made, and that we continue to make those accommodations. While they're a small fraction of our students, they do want to go into the workforce, often in different spaces, and we just need to make sure they're ready as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? I believe we are ready to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions?
I abstain because I don't feel I have enough information at this time to make a decision.
The motion passes 4 ayes and 1 abstention. Next on the agenda is former consent agenda item F16 is consideration to approve purchase from current district contract 2202 PV for Dell Windows computers. Ms. Copen.
President Greenberg, Governing Board, this purchase will replace end-of-life staff computers with new Windows-based devices and establish a consistent standard for our staff technology. The Dell Latitude 7450 computer delivers reliable performance for their daily tasks. This purchase also includes 5-year accidental damage warranty, next business day on-site service, and 24/7 technical support, which ensures minimal downtime and sustained productivity. The Information Technology Committee worked collaboratively to select this device due to its strong alignment with the district's classroom endpoint standards. We are here for questions, and we do request approval for this item.
Thank you, Ms. Copen. We have 1 comment card on this. Nicole Klutwick, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you, President Greenberg, Dr. Reynolds, board members, cabinet. I appreciate the time for the comments. I have to say, when I saw the agenda and I looked through it, I was frankly really sad, disappointed, and a little angry. Not including the $1 million that got removed from the agenda tonight, you have about $10 million worth of spending in your consent agenda, which meant it was going to pass with no one asking any questions. I know some people said they might have some additional things that they would take off, but as board members, I know you're able to take them off of consent ahead of time. And so a lot of you guys ran on fiscal responsibility and that you would not be a rubber stamper. And I love the healthy debate that you guys just had. It was wonderful. I would like to see a lot more of it. I think our community deserves it. While we passed a $340 million bond, while we still had $120 million in our bond account waiting to be spent, we have promised the taxpayers we wouldn't spend it if we didn't need it. And what appears to be happening here is an acceleration of spending so that when it comes up on schedule in another 3 years, that you guys can say, well, look at how much we've spent. Of course we need more. Like, that's not fair to the taxpayer. It's not fair to overspend on things that aren't necessary or pre-spend in order to bump up your numbers of capital spending. So I want to warn you for that. Here's my specific question here. Speaking of bumping up, so we are buying 1,500 replacement laptops for staff. Okay, I don't have a problem with buying replacement laptops, but these do have a 5-year warranty, so I would expect them to last at least 5 years. And we have 3,800 staff. So are we replacing basically half of our staff's laptop all in 1 year? Typically, you would do a 20% per year so that you're not in 5 years later, when you might not have the capital, stuck replacing all of them at once. So I'd like you to consider reducing that amount. Thank you so much.
Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to approve purchase from current district contract 2202 PV for Dell Windows computers?
So moved.
Does any member of the board have any questions or comments? Mrs. Christensen?
Yeah. Dr. Billingsley, you're up again. I just was wondering, I know that this is the same vendor. I'm not sure if it's pronounced Bloom, B-L-U-U-M, as the interactive displays that we just had a healthy discussion on. What other vendors did we consider?
Thank you. Bloom is a member of the cooperative contract, 1GPA. We've bought before through other cooperative agreements. We have other national distributors, et cetera, et cetera. The Bloom was able to provide us the what I called white glove service to make it, a speedy deployment, a baseline configuration, standardized. We also have to install management software, security software, endpoint detection, that sort of thing. Bloom, the support that they provide is phenomenal. And plus, I appreciated the discount, which is hard. I say appreciate, I have to negotiate that stuff all the bloody time. But anyhow, go
Nicely
ahead.
done. I like that. Are these computers an upgrade or are they considered a replacement? So similar to what they had before, just newer models?
No, ma'am. Since we're talking about lifespan, we have taken our technology beyond what is considered, well, unfortunately now it's not considered safe. But as long, we try to get as much life as we can out of the darn things. Again, going back to the Information Technology Committee, we are standardizing instead of having 3 platforms, which creates 3 different ways to troubleshoot, support, train, et cetera, et cetera. And that was a big decision that this consensus group had to reach. And we're standardizing on the Windows platform. We have some very old Macs that are becoming very problematic, not only for the end user, but for us to securely manage and for me to help Ms. Berrigan keep the insurance premiums as low as possible, but get as big as bang we can for it. So we are replacing, we're way beyond needing to replace some of these teachers' computers.
Perfect. And as community member Klubik pointed out, this is not every single teacher in the district. So when will the others need to be replaced?
On the replacement cycle. Yeah, which with we got a large number of staff now that are using Chromebooks. And we have some that are using Windows. So we will try to get as best we can a 7 to 8 year use out of it, but a lot of that's dependent on cybersecurity anymore. The hardware works, but I can't secure it and manage it. Right? That answer your question? So we'll be back here next year probably with some more old ones we got to replace.
Mr. Pantera?
Yeah, I want to agree about what you said about the different computers we have here. I remember the big debate. Well, you can have a Chrome, or you can get the Mac, or you can stick with your Windows platform. And teachers were allowed to choose it within these scope of these 3 or 4 computers that were offered. And then it got to be a problem. Well, I'm teaching with my Chrome. I'm working with a colleague who's got a Mac, and getting them to interface with each other. They get to be a real problem, real hassle. Not to mention replacing and fix them. So I'm glad we're trying to get more of a standard to one machine kind of look at things.
Well, the committee,
committee,
made
yeah.
that decision. That's correct.
Good.
Mine.
Does anybody else have any other comments or questions?
I just want to say
Ms. Wani.
that I very much respect and appreciate the work that these committees do and the professionalism that they bring to these conversations. I also have a lot of respect for the professionals that our district brings in and attracts and hires. And I put a lot of faith and trust in your judgment and the hard work that you do. And I firmly believe that you wouldn't be up here and these things would not be on our agenda unless they were needs. They're not fancy wish list items. I believe that. I think that our district does an incredible job of getting community feedback, doing their due diligence, doing their homework. And so when I see these items come up for approval, I certainly, will scrutinize and have my questions and ask those questions. But at the end of the day, you all are the professionals, right? And I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of dive into some of this. But I know coming in, you've negotiated the best prices possible. I know that these are needs, they're not wants. And I know that our teachers are constantly you're communicating with them. And there's nothing on these lists that, that they don't also want. So I just kind of want to say that's my baseline coming into these conversations. And I believe we should be treating all of our professionals as professionals, from our teachers to the staff to our district leaders. And so thank you to all of you, and thank you for answering all of our questions tonight, and thank you for all of the work that I know you did before you got here. So that is not lost on me, and I just felt like I needed to say that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Christensen?
Yes, and I also would like to thank you and for Mr. Pantera's comments, because it is important to standardize and to have across the board, as well as Ms. Wani's comments. So thank you, and thank you for answering all of our questions tonight. So I do appreciate all the work you do. And
I appreciate the honor of serving you, and thus far you haven't fired me, but there may come a day when, I don't know what I'm saying, whatever. Sorry. Good night.
I think we were both going for over our dead bodies here. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this agenda item? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda was former F18, which is consideration to approve purchase from current 1 GPA Cooperative Contract 2215P for asphalt renovations at Mercury Mine Elementary School. Ms. Berrigan?
Thank you, President Greenberg and governing board members. If approved, this project will address deterioration of the asphalt parking lots and driveways of Mercury Mine Elementary School. Telltale signs of asphalt degradation include alligator cracking and surface cracks wider than an inch. So this project will create a safer surface for the school community, and we recommend approval.
Thank you. We had one blue comment card on this. Nicole Klutwick, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you again for allowing me the time to speak. So I did try to raise my hand to have 19 and 20 also removed from the consent agenda because they are related items. But my request was not acknowledged. So, although I had eye contact, but it was not acknowledged. So one thing I would like to go ahead and point out is that of this $10 million of things that were in the consent agenda that were to be passed without debate or discussion, none of them have a second quote. I mean, I'm not even talking go out for bid. I believe the question was just asked, did you get an additional quote? And the answer was, and I do respect Mr. Billings, but I know this company, I trust them, I think it's a good price. I think the taxpayers deserve to have more than having to rely on one person's trust and gut feel. You are a pseudo-governmental agency. And so you have a higher standard than an entrepreneurial company, which might operate that way. But literally not one of these has a second bid. They're either continuing contracts, 1 GPA, or job order costs, which means you guys have selected, and in fact, in the memo, it uses the words, we have selected, fill in the blank for the name. In this particular case, you guys have selected, or someone actually has selected on your behalf. They have not given you the ability to choose what you think is best for the district. They have chosen on your behalf to spend $1.3 million, not just to update the concrete, the asphalt, but they are completely ripping out the asphalt, replacing the sublayer of aggregate. I don't know why. And then replacing all of the asphalt on top, which is an extreme situation. And according to this, should last 20 years. Based on the frequency which we are replacing these things, because this is not the first time I've talked about the fact that we are completely tearing up and tearing out parking lots instead of fixing them. We are going to replace all of them well less than 20 years. None of them give the information on when they were replaced last. One says that in 2016 it was resealed. When was it replaced? How old are these? Do you have pictures? Did they give you pictures of how bad the condition is? Do you have information that this really needs to happen? Or again, is this trying to front load our capital expenditures? You should know. It should be your choice. Thank you.
Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to approve purchase from current 1 GPA cooperative contract 2215P for asphalt renovations at Mercury Mine?
So moved.
Does any member of the board have any comments or questions? Mrs. Christensen?
Yes, thank you, President Greenberg. It seems this came up last year as well, the process of ripping up asphalt and then laying down fresh salt. It seems as though it's again excessive. And I am not an asphalt expertise. I'm not an expert in asphalt, so I don't know, but it does seem unusual. And so perhaps Mrs. Berrigan can give us some justification on why we wouldn't just fix and mold rather than bring everything up and then lay it all down again.
Thank you, President Greenberg and Mrs. Christensen. Some information was shared with the board, so I know not all board members had this because it did come up last year. And I don't know if you have access to the former board updates, but this information is in there if you want to refer back to a more lengthy piece of detailed information on asphalt replacement. But we can really only resurface asphalt driveways if the foundation is in good condition, if there are no deep or wide cracks, if the surface is less than 20 years old, or if there's less than about a quarter of the surface area that needs repair. So in the cases of all three of those that are on the agenda this evening, at least two of these things are true for those surfaces.
Mr. Pantera?
Yes, my understanding that a lot of these have already been repaired several times already.
Correct.
They've already, so
Yeah, and there's
we've
only
repaired them as much as we can.
Mhm.
This is like the next thing, right?
Yes, at some point, the repair doesn't work anymore.
True, okay.
Yeah, and I would just say, thank you for explaining that. Certainly, I imagine there's tremendous liability risks involved if we don't do these things properly, not only like for like the physical protection and safety of students and staff, but also potentially property damage to people's cars and things like that. So it's incredibly important from even just that perspective that we maintain these things and recognize that you can only do so much maintenance before the whole thing has to be replaced. We've got a lot of schools, a lot of parking lots, so it seems like we're going to have this come up probably every single year because I would imagine there is some sort of cycle that they're on. We're not going to do them all at once. We're going to sort of phase them in, and so I'm just note this will probably come up next year, and we'll probably have to have the same conversation and we do have access to that information. And so thank you for that. Because it does make it easier to come in here and, have a good sense of sort of the history and how this has been done over the years. So thank you for minimizing the district's liability as well.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other comments or questions? Yeah, I just kind of want to echo what Ms. Wani said. Obviously, just as with the items we passed, these wouldn't be coming before us if it wasn't at the point where we can no longer patch, we can no longer repair, but we really do need to replace. I appreciate that we do have experts on staff because I am no expert in asphalt either. So I appreciate that we do have experts who, understand these issues better than I and I think all of us up here, and make the recommendations accordingly. And yeah, I believe we're going to be looking at this every year. There's no doubt in my mind.
President Greenberg, I'd also like to mention and thank Ms. Berrigan and Dr. Davis and his whole team for the level of attention to detail to fiscal responsibility. I know both of them spend a lot of time ensuring that the work that we need to do gets done for the safety and the well-being of our entire district.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is consent agenda F21, consideration to approve purchase from current district contract 2214 PVJOC for HVAC upgrades at Desert Shadows Middle School. Ms. Berrigan.
Thank you, President Greenberg. If approved, this project will replace an obsolete HVAC system currently in place on the A and E classroom buildings at Desert Shadows Middle School, the only school campus, with this system installed. The manufacturer discontinued this system many years ago and no longer provides technical support to its operation. So parts are extremely difficult to acquire and disruptions to the learning environment are frequent. The system is being replaced by a traditional package unit system that will work seamlessly with the current district standard HVAC controls. The contractor will be installing new electrical and utilizing new and existing ductwork to support 59 new air conditioning units throughout the buildings. This renovation will dramatically improve the reliability of a comfortable indoor climate at Desert Shadows Middle School, and I recommend approval.
Thank you. We have one public comment card. You'll have 3 minutes. Nicole Klubick.
Hello. Thank you again for allowing me the privilege of speaking. I do want to point out with my last question, it wasn't answered. No, as far as I can tell, none of you got pictures. And when the answer was given, no dates were given. No dates of the initial installation, no dates or numbers of how many times it actually was replaced. You got all trust, no verify. That's the situation we just entered.
This isn't the agenda item. Can you please address?
Yes,
one?
of course.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I know it's painful to listen to. So this is Pueblo Mechanical, almost $2.6 million. Again, we should have a bid for this. I know that it's under your bylaw amount of job order costing of $3 million, but the Arizona state statute actually suggests that that number should be 1 million. You guys have increased that amount to 3 million and allowed the administration to put these things before you that really should have bids. There should be additional people. We're giving quotes. The fact that you guys have chosen Pueblo Mechanical, who also donates to the Yes for PV students, which funds the bond initiative, encouraging, sending out mailers, then spending thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, convincing voters to fund the bond and pass the bond, it seems a little unethical to then just select them as your contractor. Thank you.
Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to approve purchase from current district contract 2214 PV JOC for HVAC upgrades at Desert Shadows Middle School as presented?
So moved.
Does any member of the board have any questions or comment?
I just want to say I'm a
Ms.
big
Moore?
fan of good indoor air quality. So thank you so much. And I'm sure the Desert Shadows staff and students also thank you, because we're talking not only about temperature comfort, we're talking about like our health. And it's incredibly important. And I'm really actually very, very pleased to see this on the agenda. And I am going to be very excited to vote in just a moment.
Dr. Lim?
So I do have a question. I know Dr. Davis has been working really hard on making sure we maintain our schools and all of that. I do have a question specifically because this is Desert Shadows. I know we're going to be talking later about Indian Bend and rebuilding of schools, but I know in the previous bond, there was the potential to rebuild a middle school. And this is our oldest middle school. So I'm not sure if Dr. Davis is aware of if this is one that's slated for a rebuild, and are we putting an HVAC system on a school that's actually one of our oldest, it is our oldest middle school based on the reconstruction dates that are available to me. So are we putting a new HVAC system on a school that's slated for a rebuild very shortly?
I don't necessarily want to give away which schools are slotted for replacement. However, I can say we are being very judicious about ensuring that we're not putting into money into something that we're eventually going to tear down. Desert Shadows Middle School is built like a bomb shelter. It will be here long after any of us are here.
I know the middle schools are built varied and their high schools have really long shelf lives because of the nature of their build. But again, those details aren't available to me. So thank you for clarifying that school is in solid shape other than its HVAC system.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Mrs. Christensen?
Thank you, and thank you for that question, Dr. Lim. Well, I don't necessarily have a concern with upgrading the HVAC system, but however, on this item, it is over $2 million, and just making a plea to district leadership and president and superintendent to put things in items for discussion. There was a lot in the consent agenda here, and so this item was over 2 million, and it just seems that we owe taxpayers a discussion on these, even if we're going to approve them.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Last on the items for approval is what was F24, consideration to approve purchase from current Mojave Cooperative Contract 23D CSBS 0905 for multifunction school activity buses. Ms. Berrigan.
Thank you, President Greenberg. It is the recommendation of our Director of Transportation, Mr. Brandon George, that we purchase these activity buses. It is part of our budget and planned budget expenditures. These will be 4 14-passenger school activity buses, and they'll be replacing buses that were purchased in 2009. We will keep those in the fleet for backup buses, but we don't want to continue to use those as our primaries. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We have one blue public comment card. Ms. Klutwick, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you again for the privilege to speak. So my vet just happens to be right next to the bus barn that is between 32nd Street and Cave Creek Road. So I have had occasion, unfortunately, to be driving by that parking lot quite frequently lately. It is filled with buses. And as you guys have all mentioned, in fact, it's such a dire situation that we are now paying $100 as incentive pay per week for bus drivers to show up. It appears we have more buses than we can drive now. So while it might be in the budget, the question is do we need it? Can we utilize it? And why are we keeping the rest in reserves when, again, we have a lot of buses that are sitting, and that's not the only park. There's another one around the corner on 32nd Street. Like, we have these large lots filled with buses that do not appear to be, oh, and there's another one off of the 101, right? So we have several parking lots filled with buses. I don't know why exactly we need this 14 and why we need to hold on to the others in reserve. So if that could be addressed, that would be great. Thanks.
Mr. Pantera may have a motion to approve purchase from current Mojave Cooperative Contract 23D CSBS 0905 for multifunction school activity buses.
So moved.
Does any member of the board have any questions or comments on this item? Ms. Wani?
Yeah, I guess my only question really is, sort of what went into the conversations to determine, like, I think it's is it 4 buses? That the 4 buses?
4 buses.
4 buses, okay.
14 passenger.
4 buses that can hold 14 passengers. So if you could just share what went into this decision and recommendation.
Yeah, I would say the use of the word bus is probably a loose word of the use bus. I would say more like a van. These are the vehicles that you will see parked at schools, not in a bus barn. They are white fleet vehicles, not yellow buses, and they are ever more important as we do not have enough bus drivers and we rely on other staff to drive students around. They can drive these, they cannot drive yellow buses. Thank you.
So just to clarify, these are vehicles that can be driven without that license that's required to drive a bus, the
Correct.
CDL. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Christensen?
So would these types of vehicles help alleviate a problem? For instance, say we have students that want to go on either a field trip or a sporting event, and I know that the big buses can only be driven certain times. I think there's a time limit. I don't really understand all the rules. Maybe you can enlighten me. I know that's sometimes, for instance, like a sporting event, if the sporting event is at 4 and that's not the time because they're taking people home, they can't do that. Would this, because a staff member can drive this, would this help alleviate some of that?
That's exactly.
Do you
what it
understand
would-
my question?
That's exactly what it would do.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Thank you. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is call to the public, so I'd ask that you turn your attention to the video monitors.
Call to the Public is about to convene. This portion of today's meeting allows the public the opportunity to address the governing board. Although state law does not require that the governing board hold a call to the public, the Paradise Valley Unified School District and its board have chosen to do so because we believe it's important to hear about concerns and issues from our community. While Call to the Public is not designed to be a discussion, the board is here to listen. Due to Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot respond to, discuss, or take any action on items brought up during this time. However, staff members may be directed to get back to you and address individual concerns. As a reminder, the point of this and every board meeting is to accomplish the business at hand, and to be able to do so in an open and collaborative way. All in attendance are expected to observe meeting rules, as well as rules of politeness and decorum, so that we may serve as an example to our students that issues can be discussed in a respectful and civil manner.
Thank you. Tonight, we have 7 people who have submitted comment cards prior to the start of the meeting, and each speaker will have 3 minutes for remarks. As a reminder, we ask that you please direct your comments to the board. Please state your first and last name when you come to the podium. Our first speaker is Nicole Klutwick, and our next speaker will be Loretta Sotelo.
Hi, I am here. Oh, that's a beautiful color on you. Again, thank you for your time and your patience. I do realize that I ask a lot of questions. I think it's really important. I think that knowing what the community thinks is really important. And I want to give you, I guess, accolades for putting out a survey so that people can tell you what they think is important about the superintendent, which you are now going to be entering an interview process for. I do want to say, though, that it's not helpful. It's not a helpful survey. So for instance, one of the things you ask is how important it is that the superintendent have a vision. It is far, far more important that we know and that the community can give feedback on what the vision should be. Is the vision whole community, whole child schools? But he's really good at that vision? Well, there's a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily want that. Is the vision academics first? There's no place for somebody to give that information. And really, the wording is so vague that depending on your lens, it can be twisted into mean literally almost anything. For instance, vision. There's also innovation. I mean, frankly, like, what does that mean? They're going to be innovative. Does that mean that we're going to go back to basics, or which would be innovative for our district? Or does it mean we're going to do whole language? Because we did whole language and it failed. Phonics was better. Are we going to do direct instruction, which studies have shown are outperforming the more curiosity, exploratory only kind of approach? It's everything that I went down there other than transparency and communication can be twisted into whatever your worldview, whatever your wish list means. And I'm discouraged that you guys can use that someone can use those survey results to basically justify any decision that you make and say, well, this is what the community asked for. You can't know what the community's asked for based on the vagueness of that. One thing I was sad was not included was academic proficiency. We have a high school with only 25% of our kids reading at or above grade level. We have, across the US, 54% of the adults read at 6th grade or below, which means our students may not be able to be getting help at home. It is so important that the new, whoever becomes the permanent superintendent has academic proficiency, and it was nowhere on your survey. So I would ask that you redo your survey and actually get their opinions.
Next is Loretta Sotelo, followed by Jacob Anderson.
Hi, my name is Loretta Sotelo. I'm a parent of a senior in the district, and I proudly taught 2nd grade for 9 years at Palomino Primary. Shout out to Palomino. I'm incredibly concerned about the lack of attention given by the board and the superintendent specifically about the threats to our students and their families for deportation. It's your obligation to protect and serve the students and their families, and the silence on this issue is disheartening. Students expect to come to a safe place at school where they can learn, and it's impossible to do so while worrying whether or not their parents will be deported or whether ICE officials will target them on their campus. Is this not an important issue? Do our students of color, both documented and undocumented, not warrant reassurance that they will be protected? What I see is a lack of moral courage. As you know, normally protected spaces are under assault under this administration, and immigrants have been scapegoated and demonized. It's imperative that we protect all of our students and that they feel cared for in these uncertain times. We must have a plan as a district to ensure protocols are met. Directives should be given to staff and administration to stop warrantless threats to our schools. Our students and families should be sent information regarding their rights, as well as reassurance that this is a priority for the district. Parents should be urged to update contact information. Bus drivers should be informed of what to do if students are dropped off and family has been removed. This is your job. I urge you to take this more seriously and to show that you care about all of your students, not just the protected ones. Thank you so much.
President Greenberg, we can make contact and share some of the things that we're working on with the.
Thank you. Next is Jacob Anderson, followed by Jake Husted, or Husted, sorry.
Good evening. I'm Jake Anderson. I'm the proud parent of a 4th grader and 1st grader at Mercury Mine, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of Shadow Mountain Area Sports Home, which is a community-based softball and baseball league. I'm one of many volunteer coaches that take a lot of joy in working with the kids of this community, including my own. Recently, the Community Baseball League decided to transition into a different format that would allow them to grow, to raise funds in order to replace lights on our fields and do some needed field repairs. And in that process, we lost what was fixed to be a long-term contract with our fields, the Nancy Lane fields at Roadrunner School. And so with that, has put us in limbo. Unfortunately, during that time, because we transitioned from being a part of Little League to something else, although still a nonprofit organization, Little League and what appears to be a bad actor have come in and sort of undermined our work. Again, I am up here on behalf of all the volunteer coaches, the 250 plus kids that we have signed up for baseball and softball that are ready to start playing. And we hope that the board, PVUSD, will help support us in regaining those fields so that we can continue to play. It's really not about baseball or softball, as you guys can appreciate. When my now 4th grader started, he couldn't throw a ball or hit a ball. And now he wants to be a professional baseball player. He has backup plans, hopefully. But, you know, it's about the community. And I was heartened to hear about the importance of community that you all spoke to in your opening remarks. And it's clear that we have an incredible community. This baseball and softball league is an extension of that incredible community. And so we hope we can have your support in being able to continue and grow that community. Thank you.
So next is Houston, followed by Russ Nelson. I apologize if I mispronounced.
Happens all the time. Good evening, Madam President and Governing Board. My name is Jake Husted, and I'm a proud parent of 2 sons who attend schools in the Paradise Valley District. But more importantly, they've been part of the community of SMASH, or formerly known as the Shadow Mountain Little League, for the past several years. I can't fully express how much this program has meant to me and my family, and more importantly, my boys. The weekly practices and games are not just events we mark on our calendars, but they are the highlights of our week. They've given us opportunity to build lasting connections in the community and create a second family that we have cherished very deeply. There's something incredibly special about a place where we can all gather, families cheering on the sidelines, watching your children grow, learn, and share moments of joy. This is what the community really means. Nancy Lane Fields and Shea Middle School Fields have become that place where our family feels of a sense of belonging. But it is heartbreaking to think that that very community that we have come to love, we could lose that space. What does it say to our children when they don't truly have a home field? Let me tell you what it says. It says that you have no home, you have no support, and perhaps most painfully of all, you have no sense of community. Today, I stand before you not just as a parent, but as someone who believes in the power of sports to unite the strength of our community. I am asking for your help to ensure the growth of our community, the future of our children, and to show that you're not just committed to the families here today, but that you're invested in the future of our children. Together, I want to build a foundation that will nurture our children, inspire them to reach their full potential, and create a lasting impact on the future of this community and this program. I thank you for your time.
Next is Russ Nelson, followed by Stephanie. Thank you.
Good evening, President Greenberg, Dr. Reynolds, and the rest of the members of the board. My name is Russ Nelson, a former member of the United States Air Force and a proud parent of a kindergarten over at Mercury Mine. I'm also a coach for T-ball for the SMASH League, and I can't stress how important it is for us to have access to the Nancy Lane fields. Just like the other gentleman just said, it is a sense of community for us. And a lot of the kids on our team they go to Mercury Mine, and for them and for their parents, a lot of them are just rushing from work to be able to get them to practice at 4:30 and to be able for them to go over and have to go over to Scottsdale like 15, 20 minutes away. It's a huge inconvenience for them. I have children that are being raised just by their grandparents. I have children that are coming from divorced homes and everything where their parents are just trying to make it work for them to get to these practices on time. And it is just very important for us if we can get your consideration for us to get access to Nancy Lane Fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Stephanie Turigian. Thank you. And last will be Ashley Stoker.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Stephanie Turigian. I'm also a public servant. I've worked with Maricopa County for almost 9 years in real estate, doing lease license agreements, and now in the housing and community development. I'm here today to plea and ask that Nancy Lane Fields be returned to the 250 children that, enjoy their time there. I'm a single mom, 2 kids, and I'm about to be a mom of 3. I'm adopting my son's younger sister. It's been a very long process. She's coming home to us from California next Thursday on the 13th. She loves to support and watch her big brother play baseball. This mitt right here is what he has left of his dad's youth. I am also an assistant coach on SMASH. I love baseball. I always have. It would be a really, really sad thing to see those lanes at Nancy Lane baseball fields remain vacant, untouched, because of a title, because of a name, from Little League to SMASH. It's about community. I would love to be a part of the Paradise Valley School District, but this new league allows us, welcomes us, invites us. We don't have a baseball league where I live, and my son wouldn't be able to play based on Little League rules. That's why we're expanding. I hear that enrollment is down for your community. It was down for Little League. This new SMASH ball allows for more children to be able to play. It's about the children. It's not about the name, Little League versus SMASH. It's about the community. Economic development. I usually go to Trader Joe's on Camelback, but when I go to Nancy Field Lanes, I go to the one right over here in your guys' district. I mean, we go to Zoyo and we go have yogurt with the other kiddos. It is a community. Some kids who go to school don't really have connections with the kids they go to school with, but they have the opportunity to meet other kiddos all around. We are one big community, and baseball is life for some of these kids. He feels connected to his dad every time he plays. His dad passed in June, and his little sister's mom passed in January in 2024. It's been a rough ride, but this brings us joy, and this brings us just really great opportunities. And there's an opportunity for a major capital improvement from the Diamondbacks on those fields. That's not going to cost a constituent a penny. Let's just evolve with the times and like do what's right. Having vacant baseball fields, that's broken dreams. I'm scrambling, a single mom, like I said, driving all around, working full time. So my son can have something to look forward to. He's meeting great kids from Mercury Mine and he's making really great connections that can be lifelong. So please, it's pretty obvious. Thank you.
And last is Ashley Stoker.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Ashley Stokes. I'm the secretary and registrar for Shadow Mountain Area Sports Home, also known as SMASH. I'm also a parent of 3 kids in PVUSD schools. I'm a scientist by training, and I like numbers. I like to quantify things. So I think you've heard a lot about what the community means to members of our community. But I just want to highlight that we have over 250 participants. We're up 25% from last year. And part of that is because we're no longer limited by boundaries. We can bring in kids that don't have other leagues to play with. And that's really a strength. We have ages 4 to 15, co-ed baseball and softball. We talked to a mom yesterday who cried because we have an opportunity for a 15-year-old boy that is a cost that she can afford. Club is very expensive. So, that really means a lot to us that we can provide this. The vast majority, even though we have the open boundaries, they live in 85028 and 85032, which is prime PV territory. Most were previously with us in Shadow Mountain Little League. So we have the people, we have our community. In terms of business, in 2023, we paid PV schools $6,700 for fields. In 2024, it was $13.5 thousand. We have taken in over $30,000 in registration fees, and a lot of that is allocated to field rental. And we want to support the PV fields. We want to rent these fields. I was previously on the board of Shadow Mountain Little League. As an update, it has been dissolved per the state of Arizona, the corporate commission, and we are in the process of closing out the nonprofit with the IRS. We are fully prepared to rent the fields today, tomorrow, last week. We're ready. I've driven by the fields every day this week, and they're empty. And that's sad because I'm having to send my entire community out to Scottsdale. It's only 10 minutes. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's all of these families that want to play right here. According to your own facility use agreement, you have sole discretion over the field rentals, and I hope that you will use that discretion and really do what the community wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are items for discussion. We have one, and that would be the potential rebuild of Indian Bend Elementary School, and I will turn it over to Ms. Berrigan.
Thank you, President Greenberg and governing board members. Are we ready for the final hour of tonight's board meeting? I won't take that long. I'll try not to take that long. This is something I think very positive to bring to the board tonight. As mentioned earlier, the community did approve our bond, and in that there is the opportunity for 2 elementary school rebuilds and a middle school rebuild, and our first on the list is Indian Bend. So I want to share with you a little bit tonight about why that is. I do want to caveat this with a lot of this is facility information, and as mentioned, Dr. Davis isn't able to be here tonight. And so I will do my best to answer any of those questions that may come up. So just starting with funding sources, we have the bond, as mentioned, that was approved for construction, remodel, and improvement of school district facilities, buildings, and grounds. And the $120 million total was set aside for the 3 school rebuilds, the 2 elementaries and the 1 middle school. Additionally, with school rebuilds, you generally have some adjacent ways funding associated with that for fire lanes and safe ingress and egress. So there will be a portion of that that will be in adjacent ways budget as well. A little bit about Indian Bend. There are 3 buildings on that site. Building A was constructed in 1972, and that makes it the oldest elementary school building that we are currently using for a K-6 school. Building B is the kitchen and the multipurpose room building, and that was constructed in 1985. And then Building C, an additional classroom building, was constructed in 2001. On the next few slides, you will see that there are issues listed in red. Those are current or existing deficiencies that need to be remedied. And then in black, potential or likely deficiencies due to age and use. And this will all look very familiar. This was shared in a board update, I believe, shortly after the winter break. Starting with perhaps the most significant issues, these are structural deficiencies. With foundation settlement and cracks in the masonry and concrete being the most severe. And over time, there's been settling of the foundation that's led to cracks in the walls, the floors, and the ceilings. And then additionally, older brick and concrete walls and sidewalks are showing signs of cracking due to age or movement in the ground. I know there are school districts in the state of Arizona that have had to get students out and close schools with structural deficiencies such as these, and I don't ever want to be in that situation. Additionally, with the roof structure, there are some sagging potentials due to age, wear, or water damage, and those roofs may need some reinforcement. And more to the point of roofing issues, there have been leaks, obviously, with the roof from the 1970s, and it being, I think all 3 buildings are flat roof, but for sure the main building is a flat roof. They have worn out waterproofing materials after these years. And those have been, updated and repaired at certain times, but at some point they just become beyond the repair. Additionally, there's deterioration of the roof membrane. So older roofs like our tar gravel roofs that we have there need replacement because they lose integrity after time. HVAC system deficiencies. We have aging HVAC equipment. If it's from the 1970s, and I don't know that all of them are from that time that are on that building. But the older they are inefficient, undersized, and obviously require significant repairs. Additionally, duct work that's been there since the 70s can become disconnected. That leads to poor air quality, poor circulation, costing more money. And then also we are always concerned about our indoor air quality and ensuring there's good ventilation, no mold or inadequate filtration. Plumbing deficiencies, these can be a little more pesky, and we've heard in recent board meetings some of these plumbing issues that have caused unpleasant smells at the campus. There are aging pipes because in the 1970s they would use steel pipes, galvanized steel or PVC, and those become brittle over time and with age. Additionally, cracked pipes or outdated plumbing fixtures lead to leaks, a lack of pressure in the system, or even blockage in the supply of the water. And then the original fixtures are also prone to leaks or corrosion. Moving on to electrical deficiencies with outdated wiring, which would be aluminum or the knob and tube. They don't meet the modern electrical code, and while we don't necessarily have to update them on the current building unless we're making modifications to something that would touch electrical, they obviously still can pose a concern, potentially even with fire hazards. Additionally, they may have insufficient power because they aren't in modern technological demands, and that may cause circuit overloads and power outages. Additionally, the same thing would occur with our outdated panels, which include our fuse boxes and our circuit breakers. They can be undersized or also outdated, and that would have safety as well as operational concerns. And then additionally, there's a concern for lack of grounding in some cases. In the older buildings, that may be insufficient and cause some sensitivity to electrically powered equipment. Then there's the building envelope and insulation. So that includes things like walls, ceilings, doors, and windows. And as those age, particularly with the heat here in the Phoenix area, That poor insulation allows for all of our power when we're cooling a building most of the time. On occasion, we're heating a building, and that just goes out of those cracks in walls, ceilings, floors, and doors. Same with air infiltration as well on that. And then asbestos and lead paint concerns. When schools and many buildings were being built in the 70s, asbestos was a common material used in ceiling tiles, floor tiles, insulation, roofing materials. And while ceiling tiles and floor tiles have likely been replaced, the insulation that would still be there and some of the roofing materials that would still be there as well. Lead-based paint were commonly used in the 1970s. Again, there have been opportunities for us to repaint, but there may still be lead paint in certain areas that haven't been touched. And then additionally, with mold and mildew in those areas with water damage pose concerns as well. Fire safety code violations in terms of inadequate egress routes. The doors and hallways have often been changed. I make a joke all the time that somebody wants a door here, and then 2 years later, somebody wants that door shut off and wants a door moved over here. Unfortunately, sometimes when those things happen, they cause obstructions to our quick evacuation routes. And so we want to make sure that those aren't posing any problems. In terms of parking lot and site issues, we've talked about some of our parking issues. There's some draining issues in particular at Indian Bend that affect the plumbing as well as the parking lot when we do have rain, which hasn't been often recently, but it does cause flooding during those heavy rains. With interior finishes and furnishings, the outdated flooring with vinyl, tile, or carpets that have been there for more than 10 years, they're worn or cracking or need to be maintained. Additionally, there's outdated and damaged furniture and fixtures, some of which are original to the school site. And then potential issue are acoustic issues with worn out materials that provide acoustical protection. Finally, accessibility issues with a lack of ADA compliance. If you don't know, the Americans with Disabilities Act didn't go into effect until 1990, so a building from 1970 doesn't necessarily have all of those accommodations that are appropriate for an ADA building. And then security concerns, some outdated security systems, and that includes an outdated campus that doesn't have the protections of how new campuses are laid out, or all of the cameras, for example, or alarm systems. And then energy efficiency lighting. We still have some fluorescent and incandescent lighting at that site. And obviously those are not modern energy light sources. We moved to LED systems for our lighting. And then I said finally before, this is finally, other miscellaneous concerns. These all sort of go together in terms of outdated classroom layouts, campus configuration, and pick up and drop off. With the original design of that school, things operated differently 50 years ago than they do now. For example, there is hardly any parking on this campus. It was very much, I'm sure, a walking campus when it began in the 1970s, but more parents tend to bring students to school via cars at this point in time. And so it's a terrible congestion for pickup and drop off, particularly being on a main road. So those outlined some of the concerns. Some additional information I wanted to present that I think is important. Indian Bend is a 79% free and reduced lunch campus. That's 6 out of our 27 elementary schools in terms of the highest free and reduced lunch percentage. And if you don't know, that's located on Thunderbird and 36th Street, just east of the 51. It is actually our only elementary school located on a main road, which I believe makes it ideal from an appeal perspective to potential families, future families. There are a few things that attract new students, like a shiny new building. For whatever reason, that is, something that attracts parents and students to a campus. And so to have one on a main road would be nice for our district. Students during a remodel of the school or a rebuild of the school could be bused to the former JPL campus pending some changes that will come back to the board at the February 20th meeting. That's less than a mile away, and so that's ideal from a transportation perspective, from our transportation, gets as close as possible for parents as well to bring their students temporarily to a campus. And that's something we've done in the past. When we rebuilt Palomino, they were housed at Air Libre. When we rebuilt, thank you, Roadrunner, they were also temporarily housed. And it's nice to be able to do that because frankly, this site is not a site where we could keep students in an existing building and build on another part of the campus. This campus is about 10 acres and it might actually even be slightly less than 10 acres, a very small area. And there are other campuses in our district that have some of these issues, but Indian Bend stands out not just as the oldest campus, but that with the highest number of deficiencies and the most severe level of those deficiencies. In terms of next step, it would be the architectural design selection. And so the design team or the architect will be selected from a list of firms awarded under the 1GPA cooperative contract. A questionnaire will be sent out to those firms as determined by the district, and then the selection process may consider the firm's qualifications, experience, project, scope of work, availability, workload, as well as their past performance. Our facilities department, Dr. Davis, will collaborate with our purchasing department, Mrs. Eva Calles, to help finalize the selection of the architect. After that, we move on to the construction manager at risk procurement. That pre-construction phase is the first part of that, and construction manager at risk we refer to as CMAR. The firm is selected through a competitive request for qualifications process. We advertise that RFQ for at least 14 calendar days. Generally, we will do at least 30 days, even total, so beyond 14. The RFQ for the pre-construction and construction services evaluate the various items listed here, including their personnel, the way they approach the project, their organizational strength, and importantly, too, their experience. We don't evaluate cost proposals as part of the RFQ. And then the selection may include interviews with prospective firms. Generally, that is what we do. So our goal here is to establish a final list of at least 3, but no more than 5 qualified vendors. And we have a selection committee for that, or we will have a selection committee. It hasn't been selected yet. That's required by procurement rules. It needs to have at least 5, but no more than 7 members. That will include someone from the purchasing department, someone from the facilities department, a construction company who would not be awarded the work for this. And generally it includes someone who can sort of speak on behalf of the instructional and educational side of the house. The CMAR collaborates with the owner, in this case us, as well as the design team or the architect, and then provides us with cost estimates, constructability reviews, and project scheduling during the design phase. We clearly have a budget set aside for this based off of what we asked voters for in the bond, and so it will obviously be within that budget. Just as a reminder on some terms you've probably heard from before, guaranteed maximum price, or GMP is referred to that. The CMAR does provide that GMP. That sets the maximum cost for the project, and it should include any contingencies and fees, like fees to City of Phoenix that we have to pay for permits and things of that nature. The construction phase is overseen by the CMAR, the construction manager at risk. They manage our subcontractors and ensure that we stay within schedule and within the GMP. And then for post-construction, they ensure project completion with checklists and punch list items, and then they just help us facilitate the closeout, which includes warranty, very important, and then documenting the handover to us as the owner. We use the CMAR process because it ensures collaboration, it ensures cost control, and a shared risk between the CMAR and us as the owner. This is a very rough timeline. It doesn't include nearly anywhere all of the pieces of this, but with the selection of architect, community engagement, and design happening in spring of 2025, design would potentially continue through early summer of 2025, and a temporary move of Indian Bend to former JPL would also happen over the summer. In fall of 2025 through spring of 2026, design and construction will commence, and then fall of 26, the school could potentially open. It is a bit of a tight timeline, but Dr. Davis ensures that we can make sure that that is done. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Berrigan. I see Mrs. Christensen has her hand up first.
You take a breath. That was a lot. So I'm hearing asbestos, lead paint, mold, mildew, poor insulation, fire code safety violations. How long have we known about these safety issues?
So some of these are potential issues. Some of these are not issues unless we disturb something like asbestos. Asbestos is known to be in buildings, and unless you disturb it, it doesn't bother anyone. Potential fire safety issues, that was in black. We're not specifically aware of any. We have fire marshals walk our building every year. When we're notified of any fire issue, we make sure to remedy that at any point in time. We do everything we can to ensure that our schools are safe, but these are some current deficiencies and some potential deficiencies.
Have any staff members or students complained about respiratory or headaches? Because
Not that I'm aware of.
seems
Nope.
like a lot. And I'm concerned about safety of the individuals that are in this building
Yes.
now.
It emphasizes the importance
Now.
of having the bond dollars so that we're able to make these
Price and
rebuilds
bond
happen.
dollars aside, we have many empty and underutilized buildings. Why hasn't this been addressed? If this is as urgent as we're hearing, why hasn't this been addressed sooner? Seems like we play a little shell game with moving people around different facilities, different buildings that may be vacant or underutilized. I'm just wondering why this hasn't been addressed before.
When we have issues, we address the issues, we remedy the issues. For example, the plumbing and drainage issue that we experienced earlier this year. We address that issue as soon as we can. None of these issues are necessarily causing like an imminent danger to a staff or student. We don't put our staff and student in that kind of a situation. But these are all potential deficiencies or deficiencies we continue to work on. And that's what we're attempting to do, is to resolve this. We want to ensure that all of our students are in the best buildings we have, hence some of the changes you have discussed previously.
So with about 79% getting free and reduced lunch, these are some of our most vulnerable populations. And as a former foster parent, I know that a lot of, if you have two working parents and generally a lower socioeconomic, sometimes they won't complain so I'm just highly concerned. These are a lot of safety issues and a lot of things, and I get it. You're addressing them now, but I'm just worried about these vulnerable communities that may not mention things. I mean, we were at Pinnacle Peak Prep, and every time my son skinned a knee, he would mention it. So sometimes I just know, because growing up in New Mexico and a lot of like my family and community members, we didn't really talk about stuff like that. We didn't address it as much as maybe people that have a higher socioeconomic awareness. So I'm just concerned about these vulnerable communities.
Thank you.
Mr. Pantera?
Just going with what you said before about when things happen, we address them. I remember teaching in the district, and this is years ago, when they did move students out of Indian Bend because of asbestos. The whole building was sealed off. People went in with hazmat suits. Most of that should be out of there, at least the asbestos stuff there. But like you said, there may be some lingering spots where they determined that there wouldn't be direct exposure. But we do address these things as they come up when they're that prevalent, like right out there in your face. You're talking about maybe. We want to avoid it getting to that point where we have to do this. And because there's so many maybes in this building, that's why it's been chosen. Is that kind of what we're going with this?
Yes, Mr. Pantera, you have that correct.
Thank you.
Dr. Lim?
So I just want to clarify, based on the conversation we had earlier, a school like this would not be able to support these new devices that we're rolling out with like these interactive displays based on the potential electrical that's in those buildings, or it would take a big lift to get them to even be compatible for such devices. Like an upgrade to this school is beneficial because they'll be able to access technology that as we implement more technology, it could put the school at risk of not being able to engage with that technology. Is that my understanding from the electrical system deficiencies?
I think that it could still support some of that. I think there are issues in terms of power outages and ensuring, I have no doubt that when Mr. Billings were to ensure that it was installed, they would make sure that the electrical to that is appropriate. But there are lots of modifications that have to happen when you're in an older building.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not saying the school's going to go up. I'm just raising concerns that we may not be able to put a device in every single classroom because this building may be at capacity at just a handful of devices.
Ms. Wani?
During the rebuild period where the students would be transported to the, the current JPL campus. What would that look like? Would that be sort of like the students would get to the current campus at Indian Bend now, and then from there the buses would transport them?
That's Mrs. Wani, that's correct. And that's what we did with the most recent rebuild with Palomino. I think we had 2 shuttles. It might have been 3 shuttles that would pick students up there and then get them to JPL if parents couldn't take them or if their bus route wasn't already picking them up.
Thank you.
Mr. Pantera?
Yes, I remember when they were taking Choya and turning it into Gold Dust and doing a whole rebuild there. Its first rebuild, or not rebuild, but they were changing it. We all had to, because I was teaching there then, we went to Desert Cove, Desert Springs, some other school, and that's what they did. They did exactly that shuttle thing, and the students would come like, they didn't take us, we had to still drive ourselves. But yeah, it was pretty efficient, and the students get used to it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Christensen?
With the question that Ms. Wani mentioned and the challenges that we have in transportation, how can we ensure that we're going to get our students to school on time? I know that sometimes buses can be an hour late because we're doing double duty, double shifts. Have we thought about those, and are we going to, what is how are we going to mitigate those risks?
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Christensen. We have thought about that, but we know that it's important to continue to transport those students. It is possible. Our buses are late every day when we're down to 38 drivers out of 110 positions. There's no getting around that.
And well, he's not here, but do you happen to know how many students are bused to the school now?
I don't off the top of my head.
Because
I know is Marcy still here? Do you happen to know?
And how many are enrolled? Okay, so most people get there on their own. So that's a lot more kids that need to be bused, right, to the new location. Or how many of these are from out of the boundary area, like open enrollment people?
Can you come to the mic?
So open enrollment students would still be driven however they get to school now. That's the same way they're going to get to the temporary school. Okay.
Ms. Wani?
Thanks. I'll be quick. Have there been conversations yet within the community? I know that there probably will be, after we kind of move through some of this, but the community will be engaged in some of this conversation, I'm assuming.
Thank you for that question, because I do want to frame that this is a little bit different than how we've done this with the board before. In previous rebuilds, there wasn't an opportunity where there was a discussion like this put on a board agenda. It didn't come to the board until it came for architectural services approval and GMP or CMAR selection approval. And so we wanted to provide this information well ahead of time so that the board felt clear that they had all of the understanding about why the rebuild was necessary moving forward. That was all towards answering your question, which I forgot now. Say it again.
Involving the community in the
Yes.
conversation.
Thank you. And so I think Dr. Lindsay can tell us the timeline for community discussions or a general timeline. And with staff, I think that discussion happened yesterday. Is that right?
That's correct. Knowing that this was on the board agenda.
Is your mic on?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Need to speak closer. That's correct. Knowing that this was on the agenda, Principal Christner and I met with the staff yesterday morning to let them know that this was on the agenda. And depending on the outcome of this meeting, then our next steps would be to communicate with the community. And then as we work through the process, we would involve them in the design features and engage parents, staff, students in the rebuild.
Great. And then the timeline, I mean, I'm not an expert, but that seems fast.
It does seem fast, and Dr. Davis feels pretty good about it. And then I had actually spoken with somebody who's in the construction industry, and they were sharing with me about another. It was actually a brand new school build, and they did that in about an 8-month time frame. And we actually have a little bit more than that within this time frame. And a rebuild doesn't necessarily take quite as long as a new build because some of that infrastructure is already there. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Dr. Lim?
So I know where the potential move will be taking these students to the JPL campus, the James P. Lee campus. So obviously, I'm very familiar with the James P. Lee campus, and I know because it hasn't been a K-6 school in a while, the basketball courts are a little under-maintained because our littles don't play basketball in either one of the Little Cubs program or the Sun Kids, as well as the fields are disconnected from connecting to the main playground and things like that. So what measures are going to be taking to kind of reintegrate this campus for a K-12, and kind of what cost goes into getting that campus to be able to allow these students access to things like the fields and the basketball courts, which other elementary schools have access to, and they do currently have access to at their school.
Dr. Lim, when we do temporarily move somebody, we do make some small modifications to ensure the campus is, most conducive to learning, to playing, especially on a K-6 campus, obviously. So we'll make some minor modifications to JPL to ensure those things and accessibility to all of the fields and things of that nature.
And I just want to follow up that question. So there wasn't any other option other than JPL? I mean, I know we have 2 elementary schools that have been recently closed and we're just K-6 elementary schools. What is the resistance to having those students bus to those campuses, which already have they're laid out appropriately at this moment?
So Desert Springs is already being used for PV Online, so it's not available for use for an entire elementary school. And Sunset Canyon, as we've shared with the board in work sessions back in October, so before your time, Sunset Canyon is slotted to receive the students from JPL from the special education program.
Mrs. Christensen?
How many individuals, educators are on with PV Online, and what is the capacity of Desert Springs Prep?
I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but I know that both campuses could not be there together. And there are other,
I'm not, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting they both be there together, but I don't know the number, but it seems I passed through there. It seems there's 12 or so, anywhere between 8 to 12 cars out there during the day at various times, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot. Why can't we have underutilized campuses? Why can't those PV Online individuals go to an underutilized campus if they're just the educators? They're not students there, and then bus these kids to something that is not going to have to be redone, because it sounds like JP Lee is already set for the littles, the pre-Ks. So I don't understand the logic on that.
Yeah, so Mrs. Christensen, PV Online, Desert Springs is their permanent home. They've just moved there, so I don't think moving them, I'm not sure they would appreciate an additional move. And that campus was set up and intended for them to be received there. And so it from our perspective makes the most sense for them to remain there. We have additional renters there as well. I think they're called Everything Matters or First Things First, I don't recall. So they're taking up some of those spaces, and then on occasion we do have students on that campus.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would be that large of a community, and it seems as though it would be more disruptive to take littles, pre-Ks, and disrupt them because there's a commute, there needs to be notification to parents and things of that nature. So I just don't think it sounds like this has been well thought out. But again, that's why we're having this discussion. So I would like the numbers on PV Online staff members, because it doesn't seem, I don't know, what is the capacity, like 500?
I would just add
Yeah.
additionally that I
Desert
don't,
Springs prep?
Desert Springs isn't particularly close.
That's right. I just wanted to jump in and say that we
you.
probably wouldn't recommend that, given the proximity and the inconvenience that it would be for families. JPL is less than a mile away from Indian Bend, and be worth the investment for those students to have to bring a few of the areas up so that they would be able to access what they're familiar with. And it would be for a period of a year, and then they would be able to go back into a pretty amazing facility for the remainder of their education in their K-6 school.
Ms. Wani?
I was just going to say, so when I reviewed this before I got here today, I mean, to me, that's what jumped out at me as a major win. That there is a place to put these kids during this build that is like, it's part of their community. I think that is a really important consideration. I think displacing those kids and bringing them to a completely different neighborhood in a completely different area does a disservice. And I think that this is a major strength of this plan, quite frankly. I understand there might need to be some modifications so that, these kiddos get to partake in activities. I think that's also really important. And it also is, then an improvement of that campus, which will still be receiving students. Preschool students, are not going to be there anymore, but at some point there might be other opportunities, right, to repurpose that facility. So and I recognize, right, like as you're making those decisions, you'll be thinking about those things as well and having those conversations. So I just want to say, to me, that it's a tremendous win that there's an option that close by.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions? So Dr. Lim?
I do have a question, and it's regards to the ball field. So there are baseball fields, and I don't know if those are associated with the actual campus or separate from the physical campus at Indian Bend. There are the baseball diamond right back there, and if it's part, yeah, Kurt Schilling did the rebuild there and built up that. Are there plans for that particular diamond, and what's going to happen back there on that back lot if that's part of our campus?
So much of that will be determined by the architect, right, and the team that is going to be instrumental in that planning process, and what areas of that 10-ish acres they're going to need to utilize. The plan is that obviously the Kurt Schilling Field will remain there and be a vital part of the community for many, many years to come.
Does anybody else have any other questions, comments?
Well, I think I do.
Mr. Pantera?
There's also another park right by there, right? Next to it?
The city park, yeah.
And that's a city park, right?
Mhm.
So, okay, we can't do anything with that.
Cannot touch
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Anybody else? Well, I want to thank you, Mrs. Berrigan and Dr. Davis as well. I know that bringing this plan forward means there's a lot of hours that went into the planning and the discussion and determining needs. And to me, I don't want to say a no-brainer. I don't mean it that way, but I think when we have the opportunity, as we do, to provide our students with a renovated building that will better meet their needs and meet the security needs, meet the safety needs that these older buildings, unfortunately, they're just getting old. I mean, that's the reality of it. And we can only patch and repair so long. And so, again, it's a shout out to the community for approving the bond and allowing us this opportunity and this option. And I hope we are able to, give these kids a new school that better meets their needs.
President Greenberg, again, I just want to echo what you just said. I want to thank Mrs. Berrigan, Dr. Davis, the entire team for the enormous amount of effort and planning that went into this, thinking they've gone over every scenario and have worked hard to bring a plan forward. Our next steps then would be to, as you saw in the presentation, would then to go out and look for architectural support so that we can begin moving forward on this plan and get this community a wonderful learning environment as soon as we can.
Thank you. That takes us to the end of the agenda. Before we adjourn, I'd like to remind you that the next regular board meeting will be held Thursday, February 20th at 6:30 PM. Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously.